PokeRAMBLE podcast.
Grab your Hula Skirt for this week as we ramble on about the Pokemon Sun and Moon anime, discussing many a thing including the S's and not Z's under Ash's eyes. But before the SpoilerCast, we'll be going over this week's news, including the big update to Pokemon Masters, so go grab a cup of cocoa as we discuss some Tapu Koko. Welcome to the first episode of the PokeRAMBLE podcast for this Sunday, episode 3. I'm your host, Kumail, and I'm joined by the Battle Frontier brain himself, Amit. How goes it?
Episode 3.
The first ever episode 3.
First take as well.
Yeah, this definitely was the first take. It wasn't like the third or fourth or fifth take that we did.
How are you?
I'm doing good. I mean, this week's been a bit hectic. There's been a lot of game news, and I've been just watching all the game news, and reacting to it. So yeah, it's been a bit of a struggle this week.
We also put together a pretty special episode this week, which we'll talk about more in a second. But yeah, it's been a long old journey to get to this week's podcast.
Hey, but you won a quiz today, didn't you? So hey, so
I did win a quiz today, so it's all good.
I do appreciate Caesar, acknowledging this was done on the first try as well. So, just thought I'd give a little shout out there. But yeah, we've got so much to talk about this week, and I didn't really expect it, especially with the DLC being out next week. I didn't think there'll be much to talk about, but should we just get right into it?
Let's do it.
Should we do it? We'll do it. So you want to be a Pokemon Masters? Okay, so this week in the news, we've got a lot of Pokemon Masters news, and I didn't expect it. So what we got was essentially a developer message, and this is the 11th one from the team. And honestly, I'll say one thing: they've done a stellar job of communication throughout the life of this game. We recently had a survey where they asked us a bunch of questions. And it seems with this update they've just given us, they've taken back a lot of the feedback that we've given them, and they will be implementing them. How? Well, we'll start with this first point. So there'll be a lot of seasonal sort of costumes and Signa suit costumes coming to the game, and it'll be done, I think the first one's going to be in the summer. But it's going to be much more frequent than it used to be. The last time we had a seasonal pair was Rosa and Sealbold back in winter. And I just want to quickly acknowledge the picture on the screen that you see is some fan art done by Han Fan on Reddit. So go give her a follow or check out her work. She's done a stellar job with this sort of artwork. But I had a question. If they're going to be making these seasonal pairs more often, and they're going to be obviously basing them on seasons, what seasonal pair would you want to see, my good friend?
So I had to think about my favourite season is autumn. So I was thinking of who my autumnal pair might be, and I guess what I thought of is my favourite things in autumn.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I know this is going to sound weird. First thing that obviously stood out was food. So I obviously had to jump through
food?
Yeah, it's harvest season, so it's when all the good, fruits and berries and all the food is out. So for me, Mallow is the person who I think should be front and center of a harvest.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Excellent cook. I guess maybe not officially a gym leader, but certainly someone who would take the grass type and be, I think, a perfect match for the nature side of autumn.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one for me, and this might be a stranger one, is Riona, the flying type gym leader from Generation 3.
Yeah.
Just to bring that autumnal breeze, that fresh breeze that, for me, just, really captures that autumnal feel, brings the really great smells of, the leaves and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be my pair for the autumn.
Who would be the Pokemon, sorry?
Probably for Mallow, it would be... I wanted to say Appleton because I feel like an apple pie is exactly what Mallow needs.
That's actually pretty good.
So that's probably my match there.
Mm-hmm.
And then for Riona, I think it would need to be something like maybe Swallow, or just like it would need to be more like a bird who was very calm on the wind.
I think Swallow would be good eating berries off the floor and stuff like that. That would make sense.
Yeah, and I was trying to think of a Pokemon that was much more calm on the wind rather than someone who is a bit more aggressive. Because for me, autumn is that time where everything sort of slows down and you kind of get to enjoy the literally the fruits of the summer and all the hard work that you put in. Mm-hmm. So I think for me that's my pair. I mean, I did think of other trainers like Milo, but I feel like most of the other grass type trainers, Milo, Ramos, are much more sort of herders and farmers. And I was thinking of sort of springtime for them because particularly for Milo with his sheep,
Hmm.
lambing season and things like that. I think for him and Ramos is their time. So no, for me it's Mallow and it's Leona.
I do want Mallow and Appleton now. I really do. Let's make it happen. Let's give some feedback to the team. Hey.
I'm glad that I've sold you on it.
Now, I went with the summer theme, right? And what's popular in
Go ahead.
summer? Beaches, right? So,
Right.
I know everyone is going to think Cynthia swimsuit, but I didn't go the obvious route. I went this route. I went Bruno in Clobopus or Crabola, right? Because
Nice.
he would sort of make like a good lifeguard. He's always got his shirt off
Nice,
anyway,
okay.
so
That's true.
no change there. And then he loves training, so he can run along the sand while making sure everyone's all right. That's what I was sort of thinking.
Bruno is absolutely lifeguard material.
I'll move on quickly to the next pair I thought of was Misty and her anime pair of Psyduck as well, because Psyduck's a fan favorite, so might as well get some representation in there. And the rationale for this is, so she'll be in a beach sort of outfit, but if you remember from the anime, her and her sisters were doing a show in Cerulean City, so it just makes sense for her to have some sort of swimsuit outfit anyway. And I think Psyduck instead of Gyarados, because Gyarados I think we're going to get as a signet pair anyway. So yeah, Misty would be the other one to complement Bruno for a summer sort of seasonal pair. But yeah, we'll see what the Pokemon Company will give us in Pokemon Masters. But I just thought it'd be nice to make up our own pairs, and we'll compare and see if we get something like that.
I hope we get Appleton now.
We'll move on to the next piece of news from Pokemon Masters, and that's a new feature. There'll be a new battle feature where champions will be introduced, and alongside champions, you'll have the Elite Four. So I've just put a graphic up, and you're going to have Lance, Agatha, Bruno, and Lorelei, including Blue, for the first sort of set of champions. Now, we haven't got a release date of when this will be implemented. But I was just thinking, with this news, are these going to replace what we have now, which are EX challenges, which were essentially the hardest battles at one point? Now they're nerfed down, but these were really hard battles, but they were really rewarding in that you'd get these gears that upgrade your pairs. So I wonder if this feature is going to replace EX challenges, because we haven't had one for a long time. But what do you think of being able to battle these champions and whatnot?
Oh, it's great. It's I mean, anytime you get to take on some of the greatest trainers from the games, even just looking at that screen, it makes me excited. Just thinking of the nostalgia of Red and Blue, and then Fire Red, Leaf Green. I mean, that's always a happy sight for me. So nice to see them making a comeback. And actually, do you know what? I remember when I did the first wave of EX battles and thinking they were extremely hard.
Yeah.
It was also fun. I liked the fact that you had to really think about it. Often you needed to make sure that you were coordinating with teammates.
Yeah.
So I hope that this is still challenging. I hope it's not a breeze, and particularly if it's not something you need to grind too much to get items from. It would be lovely to have it be a real sort of boss challenge.
Well, I've got you some very exciting news, and that's that new egg events will be added in July, and these eggs will have a chance of having a shiny Pokemon in them, which is really interesting because we've got shinies before Pokemon Rumble Rush, which is really weird to me, but hey. But here's some less exciting news, and is that DNA are going to be reworking the sort of system in the game, and adding a sort of stamina system. So you doing certain things uses up stamina. Stamina is used to be able to play the game. Now they have said that this will not affect certain areas like Legendary Arena, which I'll get into in a minute, Battle Arena, Battle Villa, or co-op battles, and some event battles. But it does mean that if you don't play in any of those modes, you'll be restricted to how much you can play the game in a day. And the rationale for this is that they want to make players spend less time playing the game. And what they'll do to compensate this is they'll give you more rewards from battles and stuff like that. Now, I don't really like the idea of being restricted about how much I can play the game, because sometimes I just maybe want to go into the game and, mess about with a few sync pairs or whatever. So what do you think of this sort of proposed change to the game?
I know you're finding this strange, but actually that's one of the things that might bring me back to Pokemon Masters. One of the things I find really frustrating with mobile games, particularly free-to-play games, is that you often have to invest a huge amount of time on a regular basis just to keep up with the pace of other players.
Hmm.
And I know that for some people, getting to play unlimited, as much as they want to, is something they kind of need. But for myself, obviously I've got work and I've got a busy schedule. Knowing that, if keeping up with Pokemon Masters is only a 1 hour, half an hour, whatever it is, time frame per day or per week, um, actually makes the game a bit more accessible to me again. And I go from having to worry about spending literally, I think when I first picked up Pokemon Masters, like 4 or 5 hours a day just trying to grind to get the best items and the best stuff. Um, in some ways, I don't think it's a bad thing that they're trying to put a bit of a restriction on. I think that might make the game a bit easier for some people to keep up with, particularly as the game moves into a longer time frame over the course of a year and then 2 years. Um, there will always be a die-hard audience who want to play as much as they can, but actually to get new players up to speed and be able to take on the freshest content, you need a bit of a barrier there to make sure that you're not kind of letting players run so far ahead that new players can never catch up in terms of the levels of their poke or the levels of their sync pairs and all of that stuff. So I can see the trade-off, and certainly for me, having played Pokemon Masters a huge amount when it released, one of the things for me that it really did was take too much of my life away from me. So yeah, I'm not against it on principle. I'm sure I know, and I can understand people who would be. I absolutely can sympathize with them, but I think for me, it's actually one of the things that could make me come back to the game.
Counterpoint. It's not going to help you
Go
catch up
ahead.
with anybody.
No, it might not. It might not. I think it's more for me. It's probably not about catching up. I think for me, it's more if I've got a game that I can play for an hour and then I can put it down. That's probably better and healthier for me than a
But
game that I could spend
I mean, it's no
4 or 5
different
hours
to
playing.
what you can do now. Play for an hour and put it down.
No, it's purely a self-control thing, and I don't have any.
Oh, all right. I see
When
what
it
you're
comes to
saying.
Pokemon, I have no
I,
self-control.
I will. I
Whereas
will
if the
add
game's got a way for me to not have to control myself,
Mhm.
that's probably a healthier place for me to be.
I think
That's all I'm trying to say.
since you quit though, they have done a lot of stuff to sort of streamline the way you level up your pairs. And another piece of news is that they'll be streamlining things even further. They haven't given us specific details, but we should get that in the future. But they'll be streamlining it even more. But in terms of grinding, they've made the game a hell of a lot less grindy as well at the moment. So maybe check it out sometime soon. But they've done a good job already.
Yeah, I definitely need to go back to it because every time you send me screenshots of the story and whatever,
Mhm.
I keep reminding myself that this is easily the best Pokemon mobile game
We heard in years.
out there at the moment.
Yeah.
Just in terms of sheer content, depth of character
And I
development.
guess story, because Pokemon Go is more about making your own story. This game is about giving you
Yeah,
story.
as an experience, I know that a lot of people love Pokemon Go, but
Mhm.
but actually, as a pure video game, this is an incredible standalone Nintendo product, well, Pokemon product, and it's free.
Mhm.
And you should absolutely go pick it up if you haven't tried it yet, because even just for the story alone, it's worth spending a couple of hours on. It's a lot of fun.
It's important to note quickly that this will be launched as a trial rather than a permanent feature, so the stamina rework system. And I will add that I think this is a win for the community, as previously, I think in the 9th or 10th survey, they were supposed to drop this as a permanent feature. So I think they've heard us loud and clear, and they're going to do it as a trial, see what the sort of community thinks about it, and depending on feedback, they're going to either implement it permanently or they're going to just keep things how it is. So either way, I don't think we can lose at the moment.
No.
On to actual game news then. In Pokemon Masters, we've got these things called medals, which have come out of nowhere. And you get sort of medals for doing things like beating the Battle Villa or using Lance's Hyper Beam to obliterate people, spam emojis in co-op games. And you can collect them all and customize your trainer profile to show them off. And I think it's a really great addition. What do you think hearing that?
Yeah, I mean, it's always nice that there's new things to collect, right? Everyone loves a gym badge, so
Mhm.
that's a fun thing.
Just a quick a quick hello to our friend, the alt P10 in the chat. But the next thing I wanted to talk about is the current sync pairs that you can get in Pokemon Masters, which is Signasuit, Grimsley, and previously Elisa and Rotom Signasuit. They're in the pool at the moment. They're both pretty good pairs to get, especially Elisa, because she's a sort of tank that helps support your Pokemon. In that she can take hits, she can dodge hits, and she can help Charizard evolve quicker. So make it evolve quicker. So I'd say drop some gems and try get these trainers. I mean, I tried and I got Sabrina, but hey, you're not going to get them all. But a reason to get Grimsley is because we've got the legendary battle arena at the moment with Entei. And this is a sort of thing where Entei's got like 3 bars of health, and you can use up to 30 sync pairs to try and beat it. And there's various difficulties, but the hardest difficulty is quite the challenge. However, we've got one sync pair that can actually destroy Entei at the hardest mode, and that's Cynthia. Cynthia with Palossand. It's just game over, really. It can 3v1 the whole entire mode, which is ridiculous. And I just want to shout out LRT Tendo Pain and Reddit for this little graphic I've got. But yeah,
Did you Photoshop
no,
a funeral?
it wasn't me. It was LR Tendo Pain that photoshopped this image. But yeah, it's a cool addition. You're not going to get Entei for beating the whole sort of legendary arena, but it's cool to have a legendary battle to go up against. But there is ways you can beat it quite easily if you've got the right pairs / use tactics like hypnosis and whatnot to keep it asleep permanently. So yeah, it's a cool little addition.
We get demonetized for that shot.
What?
If we get demonetized for that Photoshop.
I've turned monetization off for the moment whilst we sort of find our feet with the podcast. But the Pokemon Company's always been about fair use, so we're fine. We're fine. So that's it really about the legendary arena. So you've got I think a month to try beat Entei, and then they're gonna rotate it with another Pokemon, probably another legendary Pokemon. But yeah, beat the legendary arena, get some rewards, and you know what? Try out some new sync pairs and try different tactics whilst it's here. One of the coolest things I think about at the moment with Pokemon Masters is that they're referencing the DLC. I know I sent you a few videos about it, but you've got different sync pairs talking about the DLC that's coming up, and one of them were Lance and Steven talking about Mustard and Leon in the games, and how Mustard had been a champion for 18 years and trained Leon to become the champion. And they were saying that they would love to have a double battle against Mustard and Leon. Do you think this is just fan service, or is it going to tie into what we discussed last week in that the Galar All-Star Tournament you can pick from legacy trainers?
I think it would be. I think it might be a nod to what's coming. It'd be exciting to do, and certainly with the characters being already assets within the game, it wouldn't be hard to achieve. So that would be lots of fun.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's some more trainers in the Pokemon Center talking about the DLC. For example, you had Janine and Roxy talking about rumors of a really strong poison type trainer who's also a female, and they both want to go to the dojo and battle her. So that was pretty cool, acknowledging Clara there. You had the Kanto Trio talking about Kubfu, and Leaf mentions how Kubfu reminds her of both Blue and Red, because they all like to train a lot. So that was a pretty cool nod. And the last one's actually Maylene and Bruno, and Maylene was talking about how she wants to train at the dojo one day in the Galar region, and Bruno was like, "Don't let your dreams be dreams. Continue training and battling, and you'll arrive in Galar soon." So I just thought it was a really sweet moment, and it reminded me of that Shia LaBeouf video, like, "Don't let your dreams be dreams, just do it." So maybe we'll see Maylene in the DLC, but I just thought it was really cool having trainers talk about the Isle of Armor and sort of characters and Pokemon in the Isle of Armor. It was just a really cool thing to see at the Pokemon Center in the game. So yeah, and of course we've got new story chapters in the game, so go play the new story chapters. I haven't had a chance yet since I've been so busy, but I'm looking forward to getting to it, especially because Grimsley's there. You've seen his signature suit, so. But we'll move on to our next segment. And it's the Podcastform news about Sword and Shield. So I'll quickly say first that there's a mystery gift, and it is the last one before the Isle of Armor, and this is a Galarian Meowth you can get with the hidden ability of Unnerve. You'll also get 50 Big Nuggets and 100 EXP Candy. This will run till June 16th, the end of June 16th, so you've got till Monday night, essentially, or Tuesday night to get it, so go get it. But the other thing was Players Cup. Tell me about this Players Cup thing.
Yeah, just on that mystery gift, it's a great way to get yourself ready for the new DLC. Do grab those big nuggets and XP candy, because they will come in handy. Yeah, the Players Cup, running through June, July, and August, is the now online Pokemon Championships for 2020.
So not in London
not the
anymore.
official one. No, not the official World Championships that have now been postponed till next year.
Oh, okay.
It's weird when they say they're postponing things until next year, because if it's an annual event and you're postponing it till next year, you're basically just cancelling this year's event. But hey, that point aside, um,
Postpone sounds
basi-
nicer.
yeah, well, so the Players Cup covers Pokemon Trading Card Game, Pokemon Video Game Championships, and Pokken Tournament, and are running, as I say, across June, July, and August. Qualifiers for the Video Game Championship took place in May. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. And basically, to qualify, you had to place in the top 256 for your region in the May Invitational. For the Pokemon TCG Players Cup, you have to finish, I can't remember what position, but very, very high in the TCG online leaderboards for June. And for Pokken Tournament, I believe that they also have qualifiers, but I'm not entirely sure how that's working. And then the knockout stages are taking place throughout June and July. So I think the VGC qualifiers are due to kick off in a week or two's time. So they'll start by taking the bracket of 256, or actually, I think it's 1,024 if I add that up
Blimey.
correctly, down to, I think they're going to take out the first two rounds. So that'll take the I think what they're doing is splitting it into the distinct regions, taking the brackets down to 64, and then they'll take them down again to 16, and then they'll bring everyone together for the international element. So just to make time zones easier to manage, the first couple of rounds will be region specific, and then they're bringing everyone together for the finals.
What's really interesting is you mentioned Pokken Tournament going to be one of those games on that sort of Play Pokemon Championship, but I don't know how they're going to manage to do that in a coherent way, because on the Switch you have to have a separate thing for Ethernet to connect to the internet. So a lot of people are going to be probably using Wi-Fi and playing online. It's going to put them at a disadvantage. So it's just weird. It's just weird to me that they're going ahead with the Pokken thing. But hey, power to the people. Power to the people. But is that all with the Play Pokemon stuff?
Yeah, I mean, for those of you who are interested in reading more, it's all on the Pokemon website. If you are looking to participate, you'll need to sign up there as well. But yeah, I'll obviously try and keep people abreast of what's happening when we get closer to the finals. I'm sure people will be interested in hearing what we think of how the tournament's going. But great that the Pokemon Company have reacted to the ongoing pandemic and found a way to bring the tournament online, because I know for a lot of people that's been a real frustration this year, is losing out on local qualifiers and then obviously regional and world championships. So it's nice that the Pokemon Company have found a way to at least recreate some of that experience from home.
Talking of the Pokemon Company finding a way, we've got the DLC dropping next week. And with the DLC dropping next week, we've been told that Pokemon Home will undergo maintenance on Wednesday, June 17th, so day of the DLC drop, from 9 o'clock Universal Time, so that's 10 a.m. our time, till 2 o'clock Universal Time, 3 p.m. Our sort of time. But once this maintenance is complete, players will need to update their version to 1.2 on Switch and mobile in order to use the software. But what I really wanted to understand was, when the hell is this DLC dropping for everybody? Because I assumed it'll be midnight in your region, but with this Pokemon Home sort of maintenance, I'm suddenly not convinced that it's going to come out on midnight on Wednesday.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because at the end of the day, integration with Pokemon Home, it'll probably just say, if you tried to launch the game with Pokemon Home, so you go into Pokemon Home and launch Sword and Shield, it'll probably just say you need to update your version of the game or your version of Home. So I'm sure that they've thought of a way around it. I like you, had assumed it was going to release midnight, but I thought it was going to release midnight Central Time, Universal Central Time, rather than region specific. But we'll have to wait and see. It might be that they're doing a release later in the day.
Yeah, that's what put a big doubt
and
on it.
I'm assuming they're not doing pre-install anyway. So at the end of the day, as long as it drops on the day, that's fine with me. I've taken holiday off the week after to play through all the DLC. So hey, it's not the end of the world if it comes out for me a couple
I wonder
hours
if there
later.
is a pre-install rather than just a sort of key that unlocks the sort of area for you. I'm thinking the data might already be there, or there'll be a prompt for everybody to download it, because of course everyone's going to have compatibility with the Pokemon coming back into the game and the new Pokemon, because you can't give it to people without the DLC.
I'm fully assuming that they're going to have to install a reasonable update to your version of the game. I'm assuming it's not that all the assets aren't already on the console because they're obviously still developing things and whatever. So I'm assuming that there'll either be a download on launch or a download that we can do in advance that then gets unlocked at launch.
That's it for the Pokemon Home sort of news. The next thing actually is actually really cool, related to the DLC, but CoroCoro, this is a magazine in Japan that releases once a month, and it's notorious to always leak stuff in relation to Pokemon ahead of official announcements, but they've confirmed that there will be a new distribution, and this time it will be for Ash's Cap. So if you have the Pokemon Sword and Shield Isle of Armor sort of expansion pass, and if you've got Zarude in your party, you'll be able to receive one of Ash's caps, and this is based off the movie Coco. But I just think that's such a cool addition to get sort of like more clothing DLC, but it being related to the anime this time. And I absolutely
very cool. I hope that at some point we get the rest of the outfit as well. But very, very cool.
Oh, could you imagine? I'd be sad enough just to cosplay as Ash. I really would. I would.
I would definitely do it as well.
But I think that's it for Pokemon Sword and Shield news. Unless you've got anything else you wanna bring up at this point in time.
No.
Okay.
That's everything so far.
We'll move on to our next segment. Gotta watch 'em all, Pokemon. Sorry, you had to go through that. But we just talked about Ash's...
You're getting more and more enthusiastic about this every week, aren't you?
I am indeed.
Every new section title, you're like, I want to put as much gusto into this as I can.
Yeah, I even edited this one. Last time it was just Pokemon Journeys. This time it's got to watch them all, Pokemon. But we just talked about Ash's Cap and having Zarude and the movie and all that kind of stuff. But again, from CoroCoro, we understand that the booking of tickets for the Pokemon movie is now moved to August 7th. So you can buy tickets again on August 7th for the movie, and we've been told the movie will release in winter 2020, so probably towards the end of the year, which is quite interesting.
What really interests me is whether that will delay the release of Zarude for other regions as well, because obviously we weren't expecting to get Zarude through the movie in other regions.
No, because as we know, you'd get Zarude and Shiny Celebi through codes when you pre-order a ticket to the movie, and these would be staggered releases, so you'd get Shiny Celebi first and Zarude a bit later on, but now they've said both of these Pokemon will be instantly available on August 7th once you've pre-ordered your sort of ticket. So I don't know how it's going to work for Western audiences. I don't know whether or not the Western audiences is going to get the movie this year now, or if you're going to get it in 2021. I have got no idea what's going on. So a bit disappointing, but I'm happy the Pokemon movie is going to be going ahead this year, at least for Japanese audiences, so good for them, really. But yeah, no word on Western releases at this point, and maybe we have to have a segment, where the hell's the Pokemon movie, every week, maybe later on this year. But got anything?
That's great. I'm sure we can come up with 25 jokes between now and the end of the year.
Yeah, maybe two, maybe two. But have you got anything else on the movie? Any thoughts about distribution for Western audiences?
I mean, I'm hoping that we still get the Western release this year. It would be nice if it came out before the end of the year, just because it's nice when you do get a movie every year. But obviously these are unprecedented times, so I can understand if it does get delayed.
Can I just ask you a question?
Sure.
What's happening on Netflix right now? What's on Netflix right now?
So the first 12 episodes of Pokemon Journeys are available on Netflix in the US. So not available for UK audiences, but are available for US viewers. In the UK, the first 4 episodes were available on Pop TV, which I think are still available for a couple more days if you can check that out. But will be definitely going off soon. And Pop TV will then start weekly releasing new episodes, whereas Netflix will release them in batches of 12 every 12 to 13, 14 weeks. So you can go and catch the first 12 episodes on Netflix if you're in the US. If you're in the UK, it's Pop TV. I don't know about most other regions, but I do know that they are starting to appear online as well if you're trying to find them and you are struggling.
Are you crazy? So a little subtle there, but I just want to urge everybody to watch this because I think the Pokemon anime is now more accessible than ever being on Netflix. And in terms of the show itself, it's a great jumping on point. It's such a great jumping on point. It does so much for the lore building of the Pokemon world, and it's hitting me with nostalgia. And I watched the Japanese version. I just had episode 23 last week, and they did something with the formula that I didn't expect them to do. And throughout the episode, I was just laughing and just applauding because, honestly, this show for me, it might rival XYZ soon in terms of like the best season since the original. So please give it a watch.
Wow.
And I think me and you are discussing, and we need to put maybe together a schedule and decide how we're going to sort of do it. But we're going to be doing at some point weekly episode reviews of the anime. So stay tuned for that. But we'll discuss that off air. But please just go on Netflix and watch it. I mean, you've got a VPN probably. Just go watch on Netflix.
Definitely worth doing.
Yeah. So we'll move on to our next segment. What's Pokemon going on? Hey? So this week in Pokemon Go news, stickers are now live, so you can add stickers to gifts when you send them to people. Hooray! I guess you don't really.
What does that mean?
It's just an aesthetic thing where you.
Didn't we talk about this last week? And I said surely the more fun thing would be to stick stickers on real life things.
Yeah,
and then view them in AR.
Well, listen. You send a gift. There's a Bulbasaur on the gift. Everyone's happy. Shebang. That's it.
Everyone loves Bulbasaur.
Exactly. There's 8 different stickers. Bulbasaur and 7 others. I haven't been playing because there's nothing for me to do at the moment. But I might actually change that because they've announced a rework to how you earn coins in game, and you can use coins to buy items like raid passes, incubators to hatch eggs faster, and stuff like that. But now you can only earn 50 coins a day, which has been consistent for a couple of years now. But 30 of these will come from gyms. So if you put your Pokemon in a gym, they can earn up to 6 coins every hour. And 20 of them will be from something called Today's View, which will be like doing daily tasks like catching one Pokemon, spinning a Pokestop, and stuff like that. So it's a way of getting a new way of getting Pokecoins, which is pretty cool for people like me who like to stay indoors all day. So yeah, that's a new little feature they've added. Is it doing anything for you personally? Buddy?
No, I mean, I it's probably not going to make me jump back onto Pokemon Go. Sorry, I realised that I was talking on mute. I'm probably not going to jump back onto Pokemon Go at this stage, especially I think with the lockdown. For me, Pokemon Go, and my favourite part of it was always the social aspect. So I think with lockdown being the way it is, even though it's nice that they're bringing out more coins and easy ways to get them, that's probably going to not be the thing that gets me back onto Pokemon Go at this stage.
Fair enough. Just to add, because I forgot to put it on the docket, but Community Day is going to be next weekend. Check out Niantic's Pokemon Pokemon Go official website for more details. But it's going to be Weedle, and if you evolve Weedle into the Final Evolution Beedrill, you get a Beedrill that knows Drill Run for about 5 hours of the day. So yeah. A little incentive for people who like PvP to evolve their Weedles, and obviously there'll be shiny Weedles as well next weekend, so try catch them. And just one more thing, we've got the Solstice event that's going to be happening on June 19th till June 24th. And this is going to have more Pokemon from Sun and Moon appearing in eggs in the wild and in raids, and there'll be shiny Clefairy now being possible as well during the event. Lunatone and Solrock will be in raids as well, and 5k eggs in all regions, but will alternate every 2 days. And on June 19th and 20th, you'll have Lunatone appearing in the Eastern Hemisphere and Solrock in the West. And on the 21st and 22nd, it'll be vice versa, essentially. And after that, they'll permanently stay in those hemispheres. So, yeah, this is a time for you to catch the Lunatone or the Solrock or whatever you're missing, and try to catch a shiny Clefairy. I don't know why that was Clefairy. I don't know why that was so hard to say. But that's really it for the Pokemon Go news. I'll talk more about the Bug Out event next week. But yeah, that's it for Pokemon Go. Anything to add?
Nope, not yet.
TCG, it's easy as 1, 2, 3. Please don't copyright strike that. So what's happening with the TCG, buddy?
We got a new set announced, which is exciting. So we've got a new TCG set coming out, which features a brand new rarity of card as well. So the set's called Legendary Heartbeat. It will be the Japanese release name. And in it is a brand new rarity of card called Amazing Rares, which in theory is supposed to be the rarest of the rare cards. So they're always legendary Pokemon with very, very powerful attacks, but obnoxiously difficult energy costs. So typically 3 different types of base energy in order to use the attack. Basic Pokemon by the looks of it. So far we've seen Rayquaza and Jirachi.
Which you can see on screen.
And hopefully we'll see a few more coming soon.
The artwork is incredible. It is incredible.
Yeah, it really is. And also part of the set confirmed so far is Zarude V. And we'll assume a Zarude VMAX unless we hear otherwise. But actually it turns out that these amazing rares, despite being amazing rares, will be included 1 in every single pack. So they're not quite as rare as they first alluded to. Yeah, exactly.
I think I might be buying a couple of packs, to be honest with you, then, in that case, because I really like Jirachi and I really want one.
Yeah, so there'll be 7 cards in a pack in Japan, and every single pack will contain at least 1 amazing rare.
Fantastic. You can see
I think there's going to be quite a lot of them coming out in terms of amazing rares. I think it's going to cover quite a large selection of legendary Pokemon. But yeah, if the artwork holds as nicely as these ones do, absolutely a good reason to go get some.
We can just see on the booster packet that you've got Lugia there, you've got Zacian there, and you've got Genesect as well. And you've got Zamazenta as well. I've just seen that as well. So yeah, we're gonna have quite a selection of legendary mythical Pokemon in there, which is pretty cool. But that's it for the TCG, I guess. So we'll go on to our next segment, where the Helioptile is Pokemon sleep. Right, I've got an update for you, Amit. I've located the team. They're in California, specifically Napa in California. Now,
my God.
We haven't had any news, and that's where they're located. All I'm going to say is make your own conclusions. We're moving on.
They're based in Napa.
Podcastform news roundup. So I just wanted to use this opportunity to shout out a friend of mine on Twitch. His name is Joe, but his Twitch channel is twitch.tv/jmedforth. That's JMEDFORTH. On Wednesday, June 17th, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m, he'll be doing a giveaway stream where he'll be giving away codes for the Pokemon DLC and more. And he'll also be doing like digital game credit codes as well for any platform, so PS4, Xbox, PC. Depending on the winner's choice, but all the money that he'll be spending will be going towards donating money to the Bale Project and the Trevor Project, which are 2 projects related to the current Black Lives Matter news stories that we hear. So quite good of him, and please go support him on twitch.tv/jmedforth on Wednesday, June 17th, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So that's the only sort of news roundup I wanted to give. But have you got any sort of news I've missed or anything like that?
No, go and support. Show your support on. It was Wednesday, wasn't it?
Yeah, Wednesday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Go show your support.
Cool. So we'll move on to the unknown fact of the week. I forgot to play a jingle. There we go. Unknown fact of the week. Hit me.
So the unknown fact of the week this week is that the very first Pokemon you ever encounter is wrong.
What?
So when you boot up Pokemon Red or Pokemon Blue for the first time and you start a brand new game, you are introduced to the Pokemon world by Professor Oak, and Professor Oak releases from a Pokeball, I believe, a Nidorino, and it's the one you can see on screen. Hopefully a familiar sight to you all. And he says this world is inhabited by creatures known as Pokemon. But when this Nidorino appears on screen, it actually uses the cry for Nidorina. So even
so
the very first Pokemon you ever see in the game is wrong. And I just thought that was such a wonderful. I mean, Red and Blue have their share of glitches and bugs and whatever, but I just thought, what a one to miss that the very first Pokemon you ever encounter in the game is actually incorrectly coded.
Wait, so how did anyone find out about this? Who was bothered enough to recognize the cry was different?
I'm sure it's people who played the game enough. I mean, it's not a big secret. It's
But
it's
it's
one of
not
those
something
things
you're
that
going
if
to
you,
think about actively, are you? It's just one of the things. It's like a throwaway thing. It's like, oh, welcome to the world of Pokemon. Great, thank you. Let me play the game.
no, absolutely. It's just a throwaway thing. But when I saw it, I just burst out laughing. That I was like, I know that these games have got bugs, but surely if this is the opening moment of your game, you're going to get it perfect, right?
Hmm.
But no, they use the cry for Nidorina.
That was a good fact of the week. I am enjoying these little facts of the week that you're giving us. So I appreciate that. How many more have you got for me?
I mean, how many more weeks are you going to keep podcasting for?
Good question. All right, we'll move on to our next topic. Now, before we go to the next topic, I just want to warn people that the next topic is going to be about the Sun and Moon anime, and we're not going to have a comprehensive look at the whole entire anime, look at every episode and whatnot and stuff like that, but we will be spoiling a lot of things. So if you're tempted to go watch the Sun and Moon anime, and you don't want it spoiled for you, don't listen to this next part. And this is where we're going to bid farewell and perhaps see you next Sunday. We'll have to let you know. I'll let you know on my own sort of Twitter, which is KumailH, KUMAILH. We're not too sure if Sunday's show is going to go ahead next week just because of the DLC, but we're likely maybe to come for about 10 minutes to talk briefly about things, but it's not going to be a long show by any sort of stretch. So keep updated on KumailH on Twitter. But if you've come this far and you've listened this far and you're going to stay for the SpoilerCast, we're just going to get into it right now. So the SpoilerCast, Sun and Moon anime. This is something I'm really looking forward to talking to you about because you finally finished the anime after 15 years of it being out.
It was almost hilarious just how long after you saw the finale. It must have been at least sort of 7 or 8
November.
months.
It was November 7th, I believe, or something. Like, yeah, November.
I think I finished it. I think I finished it in April this year.
Oh dear. Yeah,
but, yeah, the Sun and Moon anime series. I mean, that's it was such an interesting series, and obviously we're going to cover it in more detail. But what were your kind of opening thoughts?
So I think where I wanted to start was the first reaction to see the promotional image. Now I've pulled up the promotional image up there, but when you first saw this promotional image, what did you think?
The one thing I thought was it was very, very busy. There were lots of people, which often in the anime series you don't typically get.
No.
Is that actually, and this is one of the themes throughout the series, is that rather than just having one or two traveling companions for the series, Ash is actually he's got really 4 or 5 I lose count companions.
It's a harem now. I'm just playing.
that he travels with throughout the Alola region.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing that I took away from this was just how busy it was in terms of Pokemon, in terms of and also I guess in terms of people especially.
I mean, I still remember where I was when I first saw that image because it scarred me. And, you got Ash there doing a Z pose, and we knew about the Z pose because we've already played the game at that point. And he had a huge smile on his face, and I immediately thought, this must be a joke. This must be a joke. Someone must have photoshopped this. This can't be real. Because we just came off XY and Z, which was like the best series since the original series, and you had a Ash with a very mature look and a kind of like a serious tone to him. And I was hoping, given the critical feedback that the XY and XYZ series had, with everybody loving it, thinking it's the best thing since sliced bread, that was going to continue. I had no idea this was what we were getting into. And then, like,
do you know what really bugs me?
Yeah,
is that he's wearing a t-shirt, and I know that sounds really pedantic.
No, I understand
Alola
totally why. Yeah,
but it's been 20 years of the guy wearing a jacket
or a hoodie,
and he's not wearing a jacket. And it bothered me.
Yeah. Something was off about it. I couldn't pinpoint what it was, and then you're right. It's the jacket and the lack of the jacket or the lack of the hoodie. So it was such a big change, and you know what? On first look, I wasn't positive about the way things were going, but over time, I sort of understood why they were going to go for this style. And it's not the first time we've had a change in sort of style, but this is the first time we've had a drastic change of style. This was really bold of him to do.
Yeah, especially after the XYZ series that was so kind of it was I say one of the more mature art styles that we've had, for the Pokemon series.
Mm-hmm.
This, went very much the other way and was much more cartoonish, much more anime-esque, whereas XYZ sort of I would say, played by the rules of, conventional cartoons a lot more.
When you say anime-esque, I just want to break that down a little bit because that means a lot of things to me, and I don't mean to be
Sure.
nitpicky, but I think
No, you should.
I
I'm probably using the wrong terms, but I guess for me, when I think of a Pokemon episode,
Mhm,
the only things that are outside of the realms of reality really for me are the Pokemon moves and maybe Team Rocket blasting off.
mhm,
And actually, a lot of the other things that are on screen visually are things that are realistic and true to that world.
mhm,
So you're not seeing, pop-up speech bubbles. You're not seeing, um, you know, like drastic changes to the color schemes. You're not seeing, slow mos all the time. It's something that's very sort of true to not real life, because I appreciate that we're in the realms of a Pokemon world, but if that sort of makes sense, it's much more what's on screen and nothing more than that.
mhm.
And I felt like artistically, the Sun and Moon anime did something where it had the sort of episode and then overlaid onto it all of these other elements that I think, to my mind, is something that I would say is more akin to anime. And I'm sure that you'll correct me on that because you're the anime expert and I'm not.
Well,
But it
expert's
felt
a
a lot
stretch, but
more.
I just watched too much.
It felt a lot more. Um, it felt a lot more, not unrealistic, but it felt a lot more like it was doing things that weren't part of the world. It was trying to break the fourth wall a lot more.
It did quite a lot, actually. We'll get into that, but so the way this sort of art style is, it's very akin to something called Yokai Watch, which is a huge franchise in Japan, and it had its own anime. And with the Z Ring, you had the Yokai Watch sort of watch, I guess. So that's kind of like a similarity there. But the art style was very similar to that, and so I think they were making this art style for it to be for a more younger audience. And I guess with this new sort of thing of not having gyms but having like school lessons and stuff like that, like Ash is going to graduate like no one else did. It sort of suited the sort of whole, I don't know how to say it, the sort of whole journey that he was going to be on, like going to school instead of going to gyms and participating in leagues, which he ended up doing anyway. Spoilers, but yeah, what the sort of art style they went for. I think they sort of mirrored what Yokai Watch was doing since it was very popular, and
You know
that's
that
what they
the
went with.
beauty of a spoiler cast is you don't have to say spoilers,
Yeah,
right?
I know. I forgot. It's just a bad habit of mine. But yeah,
One of the
sorry.
I was going to say one of the things that I've lost my train of thought immediately. But one of the things that I think was really interesting about the art style is that it just felt so jarring against XYZ.
Yeah.
And I think actually, if it had been a steady progression, I think it would have been a lot easier for the fan base and certainly for myself to get used to it.
So
I
like
think because I
the
went from watching.
second movie, how we had a different art style, and it was like a blend of the two. If you had
Yes.
that and then went to this, it might have been easier to stomach. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly that. And actually, I remember what I was going to say. The other thing, it's really jarring to me that you say Z ring,
Yeah.
and I'm guessing that's because you watched the Japanese version of the anime. So you
Zdowaza.
watched
That's what they say. Z move.
they
Zdowaza. Yeah.
they all in the dub it's Z ring and Z crystal.
You know what? Z makes sense. It makes sense.
So it's really weird to hear you say Z ring.
My bad. My bad. Um,
We'll stick with it.
I guess the next thing to sort of talk about is what did you sort of hope to see from the series following playing the games?
I think the one thing that the games did really, really nicely is it felt like it drew on Alolan culture. I'm using Alolan in quotation marks,
Mm-hmm.
but in essence, Hawaiian culture, and
Oh.
it really played into the food, the music, the environment, the island nature.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really liked that. I walked away from Sun and Moon with a sense of I've been to somewhere that is not just another cluster of cities. I've been to somewhere with a real theme and a real sort of experience. And like when I played X and Y, and I really felt the Parisian vibe. I really got the cafes and the Eiffel Tower. Like it really did feel like France.
Like, and they
And
skate
what
everywhere in real life like they do in the game, you know.
exactly, and they're all carrying baguettes, and yeah, it makes perfect sense. But that's the one thing that I was really hoping the anime would do is really draw on the whole nature aspect and the island aspect. And actually, one of the things that I've got to give the anime credit for is it really did that in spades. Particularly in the earlier arcs of the series, it really drew on the sort of spiritual side of of the island and their their relationship with the tapus, the deities. I
Yeah,
really liked that.
focusing on
They really
harmony and
sort of
stuff
put,
like that.
yeah, and really put some prevalence into the whole the nature aspect, which was really nice.
And I guess when you talk about the games, they added a mechanic in the games where Pokemon could request help from their fellow Pokemon, and that's not something we had really seen before. But it sort of goes to show that the Alolan culture, everyone's quite together, and they're all a collective rather than individual, which I think the anime did well as well.
Yeah, and it was nice to see so many Pokemon outside of Pokeballs.
Yeah.
Which sounds surprising, but actually often when there's a Pokemon in the series, someone's either caught it and they own it,
Mhm.
or it's being farmed, or it's wild and is going to get caught eventually.
Well,
Whereas actually in Alola, you do genuinely have Pokemon and humans living much more harmoniously, and there are ride Pokemon and Pokemon that work as well, but actually there's a whole range of Pokemon in Alola that are just there living alongside humans freely, and that was really nice to see as well.
yeah, actually, just on that, actually, a bit of trivia. This is the first time where all of Ash's friends own a walking Pokemon, a Pokemon that they walk around with and chill out with. So that is a very salient point there. That this anime has that sort of addition to it to exude the sort of Alola vibe, and that's what they just do is part of their culture. So that's a really cool point there. And
Who was
just
Kiawe?
sorry, a
Who was
Turtonator
Kiawe?
and Marowak later
All
on.
right, fair enough. Fair enough. All right, fair enough.
You always saw Marowak getting himself into trouble.
That's true.
So I think for me, I didn't have any sort of specific hopes and stuff like that. I actually just hoped it would continue X, Y, and Z and go that route of him just going to the challenges and doing them. Really, I didn't expect this whole school thing to happen. But hey, if he's going to school, it makes sense. He looks very young compared to his XYZ counterpart. So yeah, I didn't really have any specific hopes for the anime following the games. But I was certainly surprised about how they took it. And I just want to know, next question is, what was your overall reaction to the anime by the end of it? Where does this rank for you? Well, maybe not even talk about how it ranks for you, but sort of how does this anime make you feel in the grand scheme of things of what we've seen before?
At the beginning of season 20, which is the first season for Sun and Moon, I really felt like they'd taken a massive step backwards in Ash's character development to the point where I was almost sort of banging my head saying, I've just watched XYZ, where Ash was probably at one of his most mature, most kind of capable states, where he had really mastered not just a team of really impressive Pokemon, but actually he was acting very maturely. He was, taking on challenges bigger than, much than he'd done in the past. He was obviously runner-up in the championship, and then to go back to an environment where he's sitting in a classroom full of school kids and almost like he's trying to learn about Pokemon for the first time, it just felt so out of place, and it felt like such a big step back for this character who has been getting progressively more and more, defined and evolved. To then see him go backwards, it was really irritating, and I did find myself struggling with season 20 in particular for that reason. Is although
well, season 20,
Ash
sorry,
was
because
going,
like the Japanese, sorry to be a pain, but the Japanese is really different to the English, because I know English have got like Sun and Moon and Ultra Adventures, and then I don't know what the last one was called, but for
Ultra Legends.
oh, there we go. But for the anime, it was just called Sun and Moon the entire time for us. So just what
Okay,
was
so
season 20?
So season 20 was Sun and Moon.
Okay, so the beginning of it.
Basically, yeah, which is I think the first 24 episodes. Let me double check that. Or maybe it was 48. Hang on, let me
I think it's
check
48. It's definitely going to be 48.
I think it's 48.
Yeah, I think it's going to be 48 rather than 24. Because that would
yes,
line up with the big sort of arc that happens at the end of it with, I think, what's her face?
It was 43 episodes.
Yeah, makes sense.
For Sun and Moon, which ended with the trip to Kanto. And then season 21, which was Ultra Adventures.
Yeah.
Which then takes you through to the episodes with the Masked Royal and the Ultra Guardians going on a mission to save the future from Necrozma, and then season 22 is then finishing up with the final episode.
Okay, so for the beginning arc, then you had a sort of huge problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, it was just really frustrating to watch Ash go almost backwards in maturity, in what seemed to be like capability, and one of the things that I really liked in XYZ is it felt like he was on the front foot,
Hmm.
and it felt like while he was traveling, he was confident, he was capable, and he was happy to be a bit of a leader.
Hmm.
And here in XYZ, I sort of see him sitting alongside, four or five other people in this classroom, and he's not sort of standing up and saying, "I want to, be the best." He was very much sort of
He was going with the flow.
participating. Yeah, and although maybe there's a reason for it, it just didn't feel like the Ash that I was used to.
Hmm.
The one who's driven, who was literally trying to run to get to the next city and leaving Brock and Misty behind. It just felt a bit different.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, but you only talked about the first bit of it. On a whole, though, how did you sort of feel about the anime as a whole? After everything's said and done, you
And then
finished it.
as a whole, I mean, I really enjoyed the finale. So I mean, season 22, particularly the Manalo conference,
Hmm.
I really enjoyed watching that. It was We'll come back to a specific part of it that I didn't.
Hmm.
But other than that, I generally enjoyed it a lot. I thought that it was, I mean, obviously it was a lot of fun to watch. Um, what was it? I mean, where does it rank in terms of other series for me? It's probably not one of the ones that I would watch again. I mean, I really enjoyed um, bits of this, but I just felt like the overall the overall kind of flow of the episodes just didn't sit quite right with me.
Hmm.
And I wonder whether that's because there were just too many people and they were trying to do, an episode this week about Mallow, and that meant they couldn't talk about anyone else, or an episode about Kiawe, and that meant, the other people weren't in it. And although, Ash was in every episode and not all of his companions were, there were times where I just found myself going, I don't have the same level of investment for some of these side
Okay,
characters
fair,
that I do for Ash.
fair. I
And
mean,
so I think to watch the whole thing again, I'd probably skip more episodes than I would in any other series.
mhm.
So although I really enjoyed bits of it, it's kind of I would take a chunk of maybe 30, 35 episodes and say, I'll happily watch those anytime because they were absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I,
And there are other
I, I can
episodes where I
exactly,
just go, do you
yeah.
know what? This is a lot of filler. This is a lot of stuff that was nice at the time watching it for the first time, but I'm just not interested in it relative to some of the other seasons.
I guess what you're talking about is there was some very, and we'll come on to it later, but there was some very good arcs that we had there. But then you also had more slice of life than ever before. With Detective Rotom, for example. That's one of the episodes where I wouldn't necessarily watch that again because it didn't interest me a whole lot. It was enjoyable during the time, but I totally get what you say. Like something with X, Y, and X, Y, Z where it's very focused. I think I could rewatch that all over again very easily. But certainly, if there's certain arcs I'd like to rewatch and stuff like that, but not all the episodes. That's for sure.
And the thing I think that made it really interesting is that Ash's journey typically is structured by 8 gym battles and a championship.
Yeah.
And actually, if you just take 8 gym battles, some of which span 2 episodes, and then maybe an extra episode to introduce the gym leader and give them some background, you've already filled 16, 20 episodes like that.
Hmm.
And because you don't have 8 gym leaders in this series,
Hmm.
you cut that in half already. So that's 10 filler episodes that they had to put in. And
Mm.
it just starts to add up where you have so many supporting characters who you're just not as invested in. Rotom, Mallow, Lily, Lana, Kiawe, Sophocles. And don't get me wrong, in their own right, they're very good characters. And actually, I didn't have a problem with any of them. But I just wasn't as interested in their stories as I was in
Me
Ash's.
and you're gonna have words after
Um,
this. But I guess just a couple of bits of trivia. Well, this series was actually longer than XY and XY and Z, and the Pokemon anime traditionally has character of the day where you meet a new character, you get to know them, and by the end of the episode, Ash departs from that city and goes somewhere else and has another adventure. This series, you had more of hanging out with these other characters with you instead of having different characters constantly coming and going. So that's a big difference between what we've had previously in anime and what we have in this anime currently.
yeah, and there was nice elements of that because I did feel like for his supporting cast, you got a bit more insight into them than you might have got from a Cylon or a maybe an Iris, where there just weren't as many episodes
Oh
focused on
god,
them.
don't remind me of
Uh,
Iris, please don't.
Oh, he's such a little kid.
Oh.
But
Yeah.
it's just one of
Oh,
those.
nice. That was a good reference. I like that.
Thank you. So I actually really did like some of the episodes, particularly around Mallow.
Hmm.
I thought she had some really strong episodes, and
She was,
Kiawe as well.
yeah,
I thought he had some
she was
really good
fantastic.
episodes. Um, but there were episodes. I think Sophocles is a really good example of where um, they're taking him out into the forest and the camping with him, and I'm just sort of going, he's a scared kid who's going camping. Like you can't drag this out for 20 minutes, and somehow they managed to do it. And I don't know. There are some episodes that are absolutely phenomenal, and some of the episodes in this series are absolutely some of the best episodes of all time. Don't get me wrong,
Hmm.
but I think just in terms of if I had to rank the series as a whole,
Hmm.
it probably wouldn't be in my top three.
No, I don't think it's going to be in anyone's top three, but I'll just
Maybe not even in my top five. What about you?
I'll just quickly say because I think I've overrun this segment way too much, but
That's all right.
all things considered, I thought it was a very enjoyable series, and I think where you had problems with some of the sort of filler quote unquote episodes, not to be disrespectful, I sort of enjoyed some of them, and I guess after you get past the initial art style change, there's a lot to love with the series, and that comes down to a lot of the arcs we get to see, and we'll go over it. I personally liked a lot of the characters that we interacted with, and I think the animation, where I need to sort of stress this, the animation is probably the best we've seen in such a long time. It's a bit different from X, Y, and Z, where you had the 3D camera mostly, giving you the illusion of the animation. But this was you had lots of animated characters, and especially Team Rocket. You see a lot of their reactions. They're always very animated. I don't know how to explain it. They're moving a lot more. An example is on the previous Pokemon animes when a character's talking. The camera will pan on their face and it will slowly move to give the illusion like something is happening. But in this anime, whilst the character's talking, they'll be moving their arms or doing something with their body. So the animation was really good, and that's what this art style allowed the Pokemon company to do with this anime is make it a lot more expressive. That's the word. Make it a lot more expressive. So I enjoyed that element of things, and I think it's important to point out that whilst we see this Ash from this promotional teaser, very goofy looking, very sort of toned down, a little bit more appealing to kids. I think the anime as a whole, it deals with very mature themes and arcs, which was quite surprising to me. And I think we're going to talk about this later on, but by all means, there was a lot there for an adult audience to sort of get into. So all things considered, very enjoyable. I rank it above Black and White, certainly. That's not even a debate for me to have. And like you, I won't watch the whole series again, but there's a lot of episodes I want to go back to and watch again because they were really enjoyable.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I think I separate, in my head, I always separate Black and White from Black and White before Charizard came back,
Yeah.
and then Black and White after Charizard came back.
It's so strange because with that series you had like, and sorry I'm going on a tangent there, but like in the first half you had this Team Rocket that looked like they were going towards a goal and you just didn't know what that goal was, and they actually felt like spies, they actually felt evil, and in the second half of it they're like back to the old Team Rocket and you're like, what's happened to the direction of this halfway through the anime, It just didn't make sense to me, but hey, maybe we'll do like an in-review series. Who knows? But I think, unless you've got anything to rebuttal, any sort of rebuttal for me or any other points you want to make about the overall reaction, we'll go into the story, perhaps?
Let's go into the story.
Let's go into the story. So you wanted to do a sort of recap of the story, a quick, short recap of the story. Obviously, we're not going to regurgitate everything, but you wanted to talk about certain sections, so let's have it.
Yeah, so just, I guess, high level, just to give us a framework to talk about. So Ash arrives in Alola and enrolls in the Pokemon school.
Mm-hmm.
So he spends much of his early time in the Pokemon school, studying with 5 friends. So Lana, Lily, Sophocles, Kiawe, and Mallow, under the tutorage of Professor Kukui. And then they basically go on a series of adventures from the school. Whilst in Alola, Ash wants to take on the Island Challenge. So the 4 islands each have a kahuna, who Ash has to beat in order to complete the Island Challenge. And then that basically forms the early part of the series. And then in the middle, we have a section around Ultra Beasts where the school kids become Ultra Guardians, and they start defending Alola from invasions of Pokemon from other planets, referred to as the Ultra Beasts.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the sort of middle arc. And then finally, we end up with the Manalo Conference, where Professor Kukui sets up, in essence, an equivalent to the Indigo League, and Ash competes in the Manalo Conference.
Cool. Yeah, I like that.
I noticed that. Actually, I realised that subconsciously it's a spoiler cast. We should say, most importantly, because we haven't yet.
Yeah.
Ash wins the Manalo Conference.
Yeah, and actually, I do want to bring this up, but someone that me and you both know nearly spoilt it for me. He nearly spoilt it for me because, as you know, when the Japanese episode comes out, it takes about 12 hours to get subtitles for the episode done. And so a lot of news websites and a lot of people on social media were already posting the result of the actual match before the subbed episode came out. And thank God I didn't check my phone during that day, because
I to this day do not understand how I went 8 months without having that spoiled for me.
Because when a certain Mr. Man sent me a message about it, I said to him, whatever you do, don't say anything to Amit. Don't say anything to Amit. And thank God he didn't. And I think I remember messaging you saying, whatever you do, don't look at the Pokemon news. Don't look at the Pokemon news.
Yeah, you just told me to shut off social media. Yeah. And I was like, okay.
And I guess you didn't know what was happening because the anime was way behind on the... You didn't even get into Kukui even building that bloody stadium.
No, I didn't even know there was going to be one. I thought it was going to be the end of the island challenge, and they were like, happy days. Back to Kanto, hang out with Mr. Mime and Mama Ash.
And I mean, we've just had a sort of breakdown, a high level breakdown of each part of the story. Did you want to talk about the Manalo Conference now, or do you want to leave that till later on?
Let's leave it to later on.
Okay, so let's talk about thoughts on each part of the story. As we sort of alluded to earlier, I thought there was a good balance of slice of life and more serious sort of arcs. And I think this anime for me was very comedic, very funny in a lot of it. And obviously that's with Ash not having this, gym challenge. Instead, he's got this island challenge where he's roaming about and discovering new things whilst taking on the challenge. So yeah, I thought it was all right. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I liked the introduction to Alola. I liked, to be honest, once I got past the whole, Ash going backwards in terms of development thing, I actually quite liked the school setting. I thought it, provided an interesting way to get to know the characters, and actually a really nice sort of way to do ventures out into different parts of Alola, but still having this sort of central hub where everything came back. That was, a nice way to present it.
And I think thoughts on each part of the story. I mean, there's a few arcs that are really sort of central to this story, and I guess one of them was Lily and her phobia of Pokemon, which I think we should talk about when we get to a character specifically. But we had the whole Ultra Beast arc where they have to rescue Lusamine, which was, I think, a pertinent one that we need to talk about. So what did you think of that arc? Do you want to give a brief explanation of what happened during that arc, sorry? Or do you want to do it?
Yeah, so I may get this bit wrong. So Lusamine gets effectively captured by an Ultra Beast.
Yeah.
But so I've forgotten his name. Who's the bad guy? Not the bad guy.
Faber, was it?
Faber is experimenting with a way to create Ultra Wormholes.
Because Lusamine's always been obsessed with sort of Ultra Beasts and always wanted to meet one. Yeah.
And so Faber basically creates this portal. It opens up and an Ultra Beast comes out. And the Ultra Beast is then trying to capture Lily and take it away back into the Ultra Wormhole. And Lusamine throws herself in the way to save Lily, and in the process gets caught by the Ultra Beast and taken through the Ultra Wormhole. And so then Ash and friends have to find a way to get through the Ultra Wormhole and save Lusamine.
And I think that arc was so good with it, the way they set up. They sort of address, what happened in the past, where Lily's mother's slowly becoming more engrossed with, Ultra Beasts rather than her own kids. She fails to recognize that, the one thing that she's been studying is the one thing that caused a major sort of not tragedy, but a major sort of issue for Lily, where she had a phobia of touching Pokemon, and she's failed to realize this, and in the end she gets captured by the very thing that she wanted to, sort of meet and interact with. And, Lily, along with Ash and co, have to go into this Ultra Hole to try get Lusamine back. Lusamine, by this point, has been brainwashed. She doesn't really want to come back, because obviously the Ultra Beast has corrupted her mind. And I guess you see one of the coolest moments where you've got, Solgaleo with Ash, going to this Ultra Wormhole. And you've got the first time where Ash uses 10 million Volt Thunderbolt, is what it's called, in English, I think. But I thought it was
Yep,
a
nailed it.
really
Perfect.
really cool arc, full of great animation, full of great story beats, and it's hard to explain unless you've seen the anime from the beginning, because it's a lot more touching when you see where they've come from and where they go to. And I think for me, this is the first time where the Sun and Moon anime was like, oh, hang on a minute, this is actually pretty interesting. It's just not like having a donut and walking along the beach and training a Pokemon and stuff like that. There is some stuff at stake here. And I think this is where I first sort of fell more in love with the Sun and Moon anime.
Yeah, there were some really heavy-hitting arcs, and the other one that really stood out for me, I mean, alongside that, and that arc touches on elements of PTSD and trauma, and
Yeah.
it's really really interesting the way they deal with it.
Mhm.
But the other arc that's very subtly worked and weaved throughout the narrative is the subject of death,
Yeah.
and death is one of those things where um, we see some really hard-hitting episodes. Actually, one of the first times in a long time that the anime had made me cry
Mhm.
was an episode with Mallow where she's confronted with, um, the potential. She's dealing with the grief of losing a loved one, and through the gifts of Tapu Lele, he's basically reunited through Tapu Lele's powers with a lost loved one.
Was
At
it
the
Tapu
same
Lele or
time,
Tapu
while
Fini with the mist?
I thought it was Tapu Lele.
That's an important point, I guess.
No, no,
Yeah.
you're right. You're right. It's Tapu Fini. You're right. It's Tapu Fini.
Okay.
Because it was on Hapu's Island.
Yeah.
But really, really interesting that um, as she's, that whole episode is so very delicate about how it touches on grief and death, and you have in that same episode Litten dealing with a Pokemon a Stoutland who dies, um, basically protecting Litten at one point.
Mhm.
And again, a very, very hard hitting episode where earlier in the season you'd seen this Stoutland die, which I don't think we've seen on the anime in quite the same way that we had before,
No.
where you have a character just literally dying of old age and fatigue on screen.
Yeah.
Um,
And they did a great way of getting you attached to this Stoutland, because before this whole death arc happened, we've seen so many times Litten taken food, bring it back to the Stoutland. We've met Stoutland a couple of times at that point. Stoutland's taught Litten how to use a move as well, and so you've sort of got used to that relationship. And for the Pokemon Company to just come out of nowhere, left field, and throw that at you, like, oh, hang on a minute, I didn't expect that, and it hit a lot harder because of how they've set it up. So yeah.
yeah, I mean, from a storytelling perspective, they did some really, really clever things, and some things that they've been possibly too afraid to do in other series before.
Mhm.
So, credit to them for hitting some of those harder points, because I do think the Sun and Moon anime touched on much more adult themes than some of the previous series have done.
The other arc, which is not really an arc, but it happens throughout the sort of season, is you've got Team Rocket versus HQ. In particular, you had one of the assistants to Giovanni. I forget what her name is. I might have it here somewhere. Hang on. What is her name? Fill time for me. Help.
I try to remember it as well.
It starts with an M. I'll get to it at some point, but yeah, sort of you've got this Alolan Meowth versus Cantonian Meowth, and them constantly bickering with HQ. I sort of like that sort of arc with Team Rocket. I guess the other big arc is the Poipole. How do you say it? Poipole. Poipole. There we go. Poipole arc, and the restoration of UB Black and Poipole's sort of city, and saving the whole sort of world. That was a really cool arc to have as well.
It's Matori, that's who you're thinking of.
Yeah, thank you. I knew I'd forget her name, and I wish I wrote it down, but there we go. But yeah, what do you think of the whole Poipole and the restoration of UB Black?
Yeah, I mean, I really liked the Poipole as a character. I thought his arc with Ash was a really nice one.
Mm-hmm.
I think the whole Ultra Necrozma arc was actually again quite a hard hitting one, because you built up this relationship with Nebby, and then you saw everything that happened with Necrozma, and you obviously felt very bad for it. So again, there I do think it was a very well done series of episodes.
It was quite violent as well, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was quite. Yeah, again, it was done quite brutally, where the Pokemon Company weren't afraid to pull punches with bad consequences.
And I think the way they set up the whole story of, look, this is the legend. What could these signs mean? Because you've got Poipole constantly trying to communicate with Ash what's going on, drawing things on the floor and stuff like that, and eventually to get to the point where everything's sort of clicking together and you're starting to understand what's going on in the grand scheme of things. Really smart way of doing things. And I think as well we see a lot of characters get involved with this arc. Certainly you see Cookie and Fabba having to repel Team Rocket, you know? That's it was incredible because they had to face off against, I think it was a Mega Aggron, and you know, Alakazam gets beaten by this Mega Aggron. I think Braviary as well gets beaten by the Mega Aggron, and you know they're trying the hardest to make sure Team Rocket don't get into the Ultra Hole, and sort of get in the way of Ash and friends trying to save the world. And this is the moment where you see Cookie reluctantly having to use his Incineroar. And having to reveal his sort of alter ego, you know, being the Royal Mask as well. Is it what's called in the anime Royal Mask for you guys, or is it called something?
Mask Royal.
Mask Royal. Oh, fair enough. So yeah, it was a good arc that got a lot of characters involved. Lusamine as well was instrumental alongside Burnett as well in this arc because they were constantly researching and trying to open up wormholes for them to be able to get to the other world and help Poipole and help sort of what was it? Solgaleo and the other one Lunala as well. So yeah, it was quite a good arc, that one.
Yes.
I've got, well, you've already talked about Mallow and her mother and that sort of arc, but the last sort of big arc I want to talk about, apart from the obvious sort of League Championship, was the Alternative Universe arc, where Ash is transported to an alternate universe where Alola is, for all intensive purposes, fudged. Because an Ultra Beast...
Yeah, I mean, it was actually really surprising, and there were some very... Because I think that's where we meet Zeraora for the first time, and it's a really well done couple of episodes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the first time we get to see him in the sort of television anime outside of the movies. And so we're taken to this world where it's been totally ravaged. There's been an Ultra Beast that's destroyed basically everything, eaten everything. This was... what's his English name?
Who's English name?
So we call him Akochi King in the Japanese
version.
Guzzlord. That's all. Guzzlord. Yeah, so you see Guzzlord who's constantly eating everything, destroying everything, and in the lore of that world, you know, there were Pokemon Rangers, but they were all defeated by Guzzlord, and eventually everyone just evacuated. They didn't want any part of it. And to see Ash being, you know, sent back in this alternative universe and having to alongside the Zeraora fight against it and try repel it and try save that world, that was a really cool arc for me. And we had a cool character, and I think his name was Dai as well, so Dai and Zeraora. I think that was a really cool arc to pull there.
So for me, that arc almost felt like it had to be forecasting for something to come.
Oh.
And so when the Guzzlord appeared at the end of the Milano conference, I was like, oh my god, this is it. This is what Ash was sent to that parallel universe for. Because I was like, you know, everything has a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that fight with, you know, Guzzlord was going to be a much bigger, you know, high impact, high stakes fight than it actually turned out to be. In a way, I was almost disappointed by how it ended up, because I hoped that it was going to drag over at least an episode or two.
Sorry, are you talking about the one versus the one back in the alternative universe, or the one after the Milano conference?
The one after the Milano conference, where I hoped it would be much more high stakes, and that the whole point of Ash having gone back in time was that he'd figured out how to beat it, and it was a whole, you know, like almost like training for what was to come.
Well, actually, he is instrumental in sort of repelling the two. We get two. One was a shiny, which is really cool. But he was instrumental in telling everybody, look, this was its weak point. Go for that. And I think actually him being sent into that alternative universe to fight it and then come back to this universe, I don't think it would have made more sense for it to be over 2 episodes, because if he knows his weakness, if he knows how to beat it, then surely it should be just a run and done deal, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think the stakes just didn't feel high enough. I think that's all it was.
Mm-hmm. It might have something to do with the music, but I'll talk about that later. But yeah, in terms of big arcs, I think those were the biggest arcs for me in the story of the Sun and Moon anime, and I think perhaps we should talk about our favorite sort of moments and episodes. So I've got about 6 or 7 to go through, but do you want to take it turn by turn then, in that case, and maybe you talk about one, I'll talk about one?
Go for it.
Okay, I'll let you go first, my good friend.
So probably one of my highlights from the series was the trip back to Kanto.
Okay.
Um,
That was on my list as well.
so it tied in. It tied in with I think it was the release of Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Because it was trying to encourage people to pick up. It wasn't just that. It was the just released Indigo Plateau, the series on Blu-ray,
I
1080p
think it's got
HD.
less to do with that, to be honest with you.
Well,
because
well,
that was only an English thing. It wasn't a Japanese thing.
but it was the timing of the English episodes timed with that.
But these episodes had already been produced months in advance. There's about 180 days gap between the two.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But either way, really great to see Misty and Brock again. I thought Brock's character development was perfect. And Brock appeared, quite a few times in the series, and I thought he was fantastic when he appeared. His relationship with Olivia, which I don't think was in that episode.
Not those episodes that came later on, yeah.
No, yeah. But I did think that was really, really good fun. But just those two battles. So Brock and Kiawe for a gym badge, and then Ash versus Misty, which was titled Mega Evolution versus Z Moves. I thought was a very cool battle.
Get hype moment. That was really hype.
It really was. It was great to see Misty with a Mega Gyarados, which was again, unexpected, and nice to see that both Misty and Brock have been moving forwards. Ever since I guess Johto, and always nice to go back to Kanto. And actually, one of the really nice things was to see Professor Oak's lab with all of Ash's Pokemon. Get a bit of screen time as well. That's always nice to see.
Can I give you a couple of trivia there?
Go ahead.
This is the first time we see Misty since the Ruby and Sapphire anime. If you remember, she was in the Ruby and Sapphire anime, in particular that sort of whole Togepi arc in that castle. Do you remember it? She appears in flashbacks and stuff like that, but like as her, coming back and teaming up with Ash, that's the last time we've seen her with Ash. So Ash does mention her, and she does get sort of like screen time in sort of like dreams and flashbacks, but not like we last saw her back in Ruby and Sapphire.
In my head, that episode with Misty and the Togepi thing had a Toga kiss in it.
It did.
But was it just... but this was still...
It had Toga kiss, or it had a Toga tick, one of those two.
It definitely had Toga tick, because Misty's Togepi evolved into Toga tick.
Yeah.
But I thought that it also had a Toga kiss in it, which is why I thought it was Gen 4. But that's crazy if it is Gen 3.
Because we also have some generations where we do see Pokemons leading up to the next generation, like Blaziken, for example, Harrison's Blaziken or whatever. So
yeah.
It might be Diamond Pearl, but I did double check this because I thought this was the case. But we'll say Ruby and Sapphire for now. But if we're wrong, email us at PokeRamblePod.
No, you're right. It's I've just checked it. Season 7, you're spot on.
Oh, nice. and obviously Brock was Diamond and Pearl. He came back in Diamond and Pearl, and I think after Diamond and Pearl, he said, I'm gonna focus on my journey now. I've given Ash enough pointers. I've traveled with him long enough, and it's time for me to sort of knuckle down and learn more about medicine back in Kanto. So that was the last time that we had Brock. There was a special episode in Gen 5 in the Japanese anime where he does team up with Silent at some point, but Ash wasn't involved there. So this is the last time Brock and Ash have interacted, really. Diamond Pearl. So those are a couple of bits of trivia. Actually, a really cool thing as well. This is the first time I think that Ash goes back to Kanto mid-journey, which is really cool.
Gosh, that's bizarre to think about.
Yeah, like he never returns back to Kanto until this moment. So it's
Does he not go back in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald because of the Battle Frontier?
Not that I remember. I could be wrong, but yeah. Suffice to say, it's been a long time since it's been in Kanto.
Yeah, no, very true.
And as Ash versus Misty and Brock versus Kaki was Kaki is his Japanese name. What's his English name? Kiawe. That's the one. Kiawe. I think the more interesting of the two was Ash versus Misty, and I was just hoping I could maybe ramble on a bit more about that sort of fight, because
go for it.
This Ash returns to the gym and he's like, oh my god, it's a gym and this is how things should be. Even Ash acknowledges this is how things should be, and the gym has got like a water sort of surface, so the environment's changed as well in that Cerulean City gym, and she uses a Gyarados, and she's like, "This Gyarados is ready to mess you up, Ash," and then so. Her Gyarados knows Rain Dance, it knows Hurricane, it knows Hydro Pump, and it was strong enough to repel Ash's electric attacks. So, this shows her growth because she spent so long training up this Gyarados to the point it's powerful enough to repel, Pikachu's electric attacks. And we've seen this electric attack, mess up legendary Pokemon, for example. And she uses Gyarados in such a smart way where she brings Rain Dance, and then she's got Hurricane to, make sure Pikachu can't attack her. And using the two, she summons like a Whirlpool as well, which traps Ash's Pikachu in this sort of in the middle of this Whirlpool, and Ash can't use electric attacks to break through it. So she's really smart in the way she battles against Ash. And then out of nowhere, she reveals that she's got a bloody keystone attached to a little hairband, and it's like so cool to see she's got a Mega Gyarados, because previously we didn't know whether or not she had a Mega Evolution, and coming past Gen 6 we didn't know if we were going to see Mega Evolution as a thing again. So it's really cool to see that she had a Mega Evolution as well as Brock had a Mega Evolution. And I guess Ash is really smart in that he uses the electricity as a footing and uses Quick Attack to get up the sort of like the little twister that Misty had made, and then he fires off that Z move to beat the Mega Gyarados. But I thought it was a really good, well animated sort of fight against Ash and Misty, and it shows the progression they've both made over the series, different series, respectable series.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I mean, it was a really nice. It was a very telling battle, and it always is when those two reunite. Mm-hmm. But you can always see, I think, the differences more clearly in terms of how they've grown. Mm-hmm. From moments like that. And it's nice that they put some thought into how Misty will have developed and Ash has grown as a trainer as well. And honestly, that was one of those moments where I felt like it was a reminder of just how accomplished a trainer Ash is. Mm-hmm. And it feels so odd when he's back in Alola and he's battling rookie trainers and he's sort of losing, and then he fights like that against Misty, and you're like, well, this can't be the same Pikachu in the same match. Mm-hmm.
I will also say that I think in that same episode, maybe a few moments earlier, Misty does face up against I think Lana and Mallow, and she absolutely puts both of them down. So it goes to show the difference in level between Ash and them two, because Misty didn't even use her Gyarados against the other two. So yeah, no. It shows the difference between those two. But what's the my turn, isn't it? I think my turn's one we've already talked about, but it's the when Ash goes into that alternate dimension, and all of a sudden he's attacked by the Guzzlord.
Yes.
Zeraora appears out of nowhere, uses close combat, and saves Ash from getting hit by what's his name? Guzzlord. That was a really cool moment for me. That was so cool. The way they just did it. And it pans to Zeraora out of nowhere. We didn't expect this. We didn't know Zeraora was going to be in this anime. And the fact that we get to see it for the first time, and the soundtrack that comes on, it was like the Pokemon theme tune. It was just, oh god, it was so cool. It was so good. One of the coolest.
It was
moments
so unexpected.
Yeah,
it was so unexpected.
Yeah, and the way the camera shot it, where you can see Zeraora use close combat, and then it zooms into Zeraora, and then zooms in more to its face, just to say, no, you're not seeing things. It's actually a Zeraora out of nowhere. Call it John Cena. But that was one of my favorite moments ever, and I think it might be in my top 20 moments of all time in the anime. And I think maybe one day in the distant future, me and you will do a rewatch of every single episode and just rank them all. But yeah, for me that was one of my favorite moments of all time. Do you wanna Oh, I can hear myself.
Oh, you can hear You can hear yourself.
Yeah. Is it coming from you? Or is it coming from me? I can't hear myself anymore.
Is that any better?
Yeah, that's better.
Good.
What do you want to go on to next?
I think the other one that I really want to talk about was I think it was honestly the Island Challenge just in itself. Mm-hmm. I thought that all four Island challenges that Ash had were all very different and all very unique, and each one. Can you still hear yourself?
Yeah,
are you okay?
I'm fine.
Good. The battle with Olivia is probably one of my favorites, where you watch Rockruff evolve into Duskmane Lycanroc, mm-hmm. that was really, really cool and an unexpected moment. Um, the challenge that I've forgotten his name. Who's the dark type trainer?
Nanu.
Nanu. The challenge that Nanu gives Ash to go and take on the Mimikyu in the abandoned shop is fantastic.
Yeah, we got Team Rocket that comeback.
The battle with Hapu and the way that ended was very, very unexpected as well. I thought it was really well done. And the Island Challenge battles felt like a real step up in terms of the importance of what was going on. So that was really nice. I thought they were handled really well.
I think a moment me and you both want to talk about is Brock meeting Olivia for the first time and that sort of interaction they had.
Yes.
That was a really cool moment where, Brock, a rock type specialist, and Olivia, also a rock type specialist, they meet each other for the first time and they actually have a battle. And during the battle, I think one of Olivia's Pokemon, I can't remember, I think it might have been Lycanroc, but it uses like Horn Drill against Sudowoodo, and Sudowoodo doesn't flinch and it stays standing strong. And she's like, bloody hell, this guy is really strong. And you see that interaction go ahead, and I think by the end of the episode, they're both battling against Team Rocket as well, and they both use a Z move together. That was bloody fantastic. Yep. Very cool moment.
I think the fact that Brock hits on a woman and the woman doesn't reject him immediately, or that Misty doesn't take him away, I think is the bit that's really telling.
Yeah.
Is that actually they have a really nice relationship, and it's nice to see Brock for once, make some progress, because often he is beaten by Misty or Krogunk or whoever else. It's nice to see him finally get an opportunity.
I guess what was really funny is that he was desperate to meet Olivia, and so that's why the whole journey of Brock coming down to Alola to meet Olivia happened. He just wanted to really meet her, and I'm glad he did meet her. And I guess one of the episodes we're going to be talking about later on, she did catch a bouquet of some sort, so just saying. She's next.
Have to wait and see.
Yeah, come on, Pokemon Journeys, make it happen. But what's the next episode for you that you want to talk about?
I think that's my list actually. Okay. Of the main episodes I wanted to talk about. Did you have any more?
Yeah, the 8th Paradise episode where Stuffle won't leave Team Rocket, and it turns out Stuffle's actually Beware's child, long lost child.
Oh yeah, that was very cute.
That was amazing.
Yeah, that was cute.
And I just like Stuffle because it's just a cute Pokemon. So hey, more Stuffle, more happy smiles from me. You had the Meltan episode where Meltan loses its head, and you've got Rowlet going around trying to find its head, and then you've got Rowlet and Meltan facing off against Team Rocket, where Meltan used his Flash Cannon for the first time, and that was a pretty cool moment. I think Meltan and Rowlet bonded after that episode, so that was a really cool episode for me. Any thoughts on that one?
Yes. I really liked Rowlet and Meltan's relationship, and we'll talk about it more when we talk about Ash's Pokemon, but cool. I thought they had a really nice relationship.
Yeah, and I guess the last one is me being a gym enthusiast, and it was when they go to Mali City and they visit the Cantonian gym, quote unquote, and they have that battle versus, his name was Ryuki in the Japanese version, but I don't know what it was in the English version.
I think it was the same in the English version.
Okay,
actually.
But yeah, a dragon type gym, and Ash is just really happy to see that there's a gym in Alola, so that made me happy as well.
That episode was hilarious.
Yeah. So that's all these sort of standout episodes or moments that I thought I should bring up on the sort of section. So do you want to talk about episode 1000 in the English anime?
Yeah, we hit episode 1000. I think it was episode 1000 in the English anime rather than episode 1000 in the Japanese anime.
Japanese anime, there's two different episodes that are conflicting as to which one was the 1000th episode, because I don't know, some websites count banned episodes, some websites don't count banned episodes, but this episode 1000 in the English anime is really special. And why is it special?
So it's the episode where Kukui gets married to Burnett.
It's such a cute way of proposing as well.
Yeah, it's a really lovely episode. Really touching, really romantic. A different pace from normal episodes, but it was just a really nice episode all round. Mm-hmm. Very self-contained. And although I guess it may not be officially counted as the 1000th episode overall. Mm-hmm. I've just checked. So officially, the 1000th episode overall is the 988th episode of the anime in England.
Mm-hmm.
But the 1000th episode for the UK or the Western release was the episode where Kukui got married to Burnett. It was a really touching episode, and I thought a really nice way to celebrate 1,000 episodes. It was a really nice episode.
And off the top of my head, I can't think of any sort of significant characters in the anime that have got married. So I think that might be the first.
No, I mean I know that there have been weddings. I'm sure that there have been weddings,
but not to like a. Sorry,
not to a major character. Yeah.
And there's two ways we can go now. We can either talk about the champion exhibition match at the Milano conference, or we can move on to Ash's character development. I mean, what do you want to do there, partner?
Let's jump into the Manalo conference.
Let's do it.
Do you want to kick us off?
So Milano conference. This was something that Ash had a direct influence in making. How, you say? Well, there was an episode where he travels back to the past accidentally because of Celebi, and he actually meets a young Kukui, and they have conversations. He tells Kukui about gyms, about leagues and stuff like that, and lo and behold, Kukui, growing up in the future, wants to make his own sort of league, and lo and behold, he does it, and this brand new league is called the Milano Conference, and this is a very non-traditional conference. Why is it non-traditional?
In what way do you mean?
Well, in terms of leagues, typically you would go to different gyms, you collect gym badges, and these gym badges badges. Sorry, a New Zealand accent came out of me there. These gym badges will give you access. If you get 8 of them, it'll give you access to participate in that sort of region's league or conference. Example being, you get the 8 Kanto gym badges, and you can go to the Indigo League if you've got 8 badges. But this one, anyone can enter.
Yeah, they let anyone enter. There was literally a dude who rocked up with a Magikarp.
Yeah, and the way to sort of get through the preliminary rounds is by participating in a battle royale. So it was like, it was very.
Honestly, the battle royale was the weirdest thing.
I didn't see it coming. Yeah, it was.
I mean, great that they're making a reference to Pokemon Rumble.
Yeah.
That they're shutting down.
Yeah.
But still.
Yeah, so it was very non-traditional in that sense. And I guess the other thing about the Milano conference is that the way the sort of top 16 rounds went, where it was very much 1v1 instead of like 4 Pokemon or 5 Pokemon or 6 Pokemon. It was a very sort of short rounds and battles, which I didn't really like that much, because I think if you've come all this way through your journey, you should be battling other trainers and not leaving it up to, like, if you make one mistake, that's it, it's all over for you. Typically you have 4v4 battles, and if you do make a mistake, you can still recover from it by having another Pokemon in the back and making some sort of comeback. But this league only gave you one Pokemon to face off with till the semi-finals, I believe, where you had.
Yeah, I mean, it did feel like the Manalo conference, and I get that it was open to everyone. It felt like a tournament for beginners, and it just didn't seem to have the caliber of participants that some of the other leagues have.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think back to the Hoenn League, where Ash went up against a Latios and a Darkrai, and was it Diamond Pearl?
I think it's Diamond Pearl Platinum. He went up against Tobias, where he had a Darkrai. He absolutely destroyed everybody just with Darkrai, and I think Ash was the only contestant even past the finals that even managed to get Tobias to reveal more than one Pokemon. So and he actually beat Pokemon.
You're spot on. It was Sinnoh, but that. Just in terms of sheer caliber of opponents, it just didn't feel like the Manalo conference had quite the rivals and competitors that, or even just the fact that they were doing 1-on-1 battles versus 6-on-6,
mm-hmm.
It just felt a little bit toned down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess
not to take anything away from Ash's victory. A win's a win.
We'll go on to like the sort of battles Ash went through, but let's not make any mistake. Ash deserved sort of that conference, and I think he did have to go up against 3 very tough trainers two very tough trainers to get to that league title. So do you want to go through each battle that Ash had leading up to the finals in that case?
I think we're going to have to, because I'm going to rage quit on one of them.
Yeah, I think me and you both will. So do you want to go for the first battle?
Remind me who it was against.
Was it Hal? Was it Ash versus Hal or Ash versus Faber? No, Ash versus Faber, wasn't it? Because
It was.
yeah.
Yes, you're right.
So do you want to go through how Ash won this battle?
Yeah, so Ash's Meltan eats Hypno's medallion. Hypno then gets distracted, can't do anything, and Meltan takes it out. So firstly, fair play to Ash for overcoming the cheat that is Faber. Faber tried to trick Ash into using Meltan rather than a different Pokemon. So fair play. And I'm glad that Ash won. And, you know, it felt very fitting to Faber's character. And Ash got a cheeky win, which was lots of fun to watch.
It's pretty funny seeing Meltan just eat Hypno's ring, and it's just like, oh god, what am I going to do now? But anyway, he progresses from the top 16 to the top 8, where he faces off against Hal. And I think this is the episode where halfway through the episode, I paused it. I put my headphones down, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore, because we came off X, Y, and Z, where Ash was at his peak, and you know he was destroying trainers, and it looks like, and this was like after the break of the episode where it's made clearer that he didn't lose, but it looked like he lost at that point. And I was just thinking, they literally, I'm getting heated up, but he literally chose a Rowlet in a 1v1 match versus Decidueye. And he looked like he was going to lose that match. And I was like, I can't do this. It made me so furious, that match, for that one reason. But do you want to talk about why you were quite angry with it, and why you had a big rant with me about it?
So Ash is fighting Decidueye with his Rowlet.
Yeah.
It looks like
a cosplay Rowlet, mind you.
Rowlet is wearing an outfit.
Yeah.
It looks like Decidueye has knocked out Rowlet. But it turns out that Rowlet survived the attack perfectly fine and is sleeping on the battlefield face down. So although Ash and Rowlet are declared unable to battle, in the stands,
Hala
decides to overrule the decision and says that actually Rowlet's asleep and therefore can carry on battling.
Yeah, and
I then went back and immediately watched the ending of the Indigo Plateau Conference, where Charizard fell asleep, refused to battle, and Ash was disqualified from the tournament. And I go, why was Rowlet allowed to continue when he was fast asleep and not battling? And I'm like, he also had been declared unable to battle. The battle was over.
I think that the difference was, one, and I know I've had this discussion with you before, but one, this is a totally different conference, which means there's a totally different rule set behind it. So there's that, number one. Number two, Hala's one of the, kahunas, so he's got significant influence, so he can do whatever he wants, all right? So leave him alone. But I think Hala as well wanted how to win fair and square and not just rely on RNG of Rowlet just being asleep and being disqualified for being asleep. And you see that Hala wants how to become a better trainer and eventually surpass him. So I think there's also that element as well. But I
think my biggest issue with it was, and don't get me wrong, Rowlet is probably one of my favorite of Ash's Pokemon in this series.
Absolutely.
But if you can't train your Pokemon to stay awake during a battle, I question your training integrity and how well trained that Pokemon is.
It's just his personality. Get over it. God. It did make me furious that in the middle of a battle that he's fallen asleep, and it nearly led to him losing that battle if it weren't for Hala, pointing out that Rowlet was asleep. So it did make me quite furious, but it was one of the most... Oh, God damn it, I have to edit this podcast now. It was the most Rowlet sort of thing to see ever.
Yeah.
I'm going to put a Rowlet noise there. Sorry, I can't believe I lost my head there. But yeah, it kind of made me feel like the league was even cheapened by it as well, the whole battle. They should have stuck with a traditional battle. It should have never ended up like that, honestly.
Yeah, just thinking about the Manalo Conference, it's the only tournament where there weren't full battles as part of the tournament.
Yeah.
So there was no 6-on-6s in the entire tournament. And it's the first time in any tournament that had happened. And it was obviously, as you mentioned, the first tournament where you could enter without any specific requirements. So it was, it was very different in that regard. It was a very different tournament to the others in the series, where I felt like the rule sets were pretty consistent. And I get that it's a new tournament and therefore new rules and all of that stuff. And fair play to the story writers for doing that. But it did feel like a little bit of a cheap moment in that episode with Rowlet.
Because I thought he'd lost at that point, and I just wanted to rage quit. Just after seeing X, Y, and Z, what happened there, I couldn't believe they did it again. But hey, thankfully he got through to the next round. And who did he get through to the next round with?
Kiawe, wasn't it?
No, it was Guzma. Kiawe was facing Gladion.
It was Guzma. Yeah. Of course, it was.
It was
Guzma.
Your boy Guzma.
Yeah, I really felt like they underplayed Guzma's.
Sorry, you've cut out there, buddy. Oh, we've lost him, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to cut this out quickly, and we'll go back into the call with him. Yeah, he's muted. I don't know what's going on, people. The joy of Discord, I presume. Yeah, very much so, J-Med. It is the joy of Discord. So I think I'll talk about it in the meanwhile whilst he tries to get his sound back. But this was the battle where Ash goes up against Guzma, and I think there was something at stake here where, if Guzma wins this league conference, then the league would be disbanded and they won't do the league anymore. And so Ash was facing this trainer who we saw in the previous round is a very sort of merciless trainer. He's very brutal. And so Ash had quite the challenge there. And this was a 2v2 match instead of what you'd normally have in a semi-final, like a 5v5 or a 6v6. So it was Ash versus Scizor and what do you call it?
There we go.
Oh, there we are. Yep.
That was weird. The audio just cut out.
Okay, so I was just talking that it's Ash versus Scizor and I forget his English name. Glycopod. That's it. But you were saying that something was underplayed here. What was underplayed?
Yeah, it just felt like the Guzma's transformation from this character who was very kind of stubborn and aggressive to someone who was running away from everything to him actually getting this point was a bit underplayed. I really wanted to see Guzma go through a bit of a journey between being this character who was really kind of arrogant and aggressive to, mellowing. And I just felt like it was a bit of a cheap ending to his transformation.
Are you talking about the end of the fight?
Not the end of the fight per se, just his personal transformation rather than the fight itself.
I don't understand what you're talking about then in that case. Because
what do you mean?
Throughout the series and up until this fight as well, after the battle, obviously he comes to terms with things. But Guzma was very much the kind of guy, and this is going to character talk, but he was very much the kind of guy who was a coward. And he didn't know how to use Z-moves properly, and therefore, he felt patronized every time Kukui would compliment him, saying you're coming far as a trainer and you're getting better and better. And he gave up the whole sort of idea of using Z-moves and whatnot. And he established Team Skull, and amongst Team Skull he's called the Undefeated because he beats weak trainers and he doesn't face the strong ones using excuses against them. So he's always been a coward at heart, and him losing to Ash makes him realize that losing is okay, and I think Glycopod helps him to realize that, and that's why he mellows. So I didn't think anything was particularly cheap about it or wrong about it.
I think no, I don't think it was cheap. I just think I would have liked to see a bit more screen time with Guzma after that fact.
Okay.
For it to really to see how it had affected him.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's what I would have liked.
What you're trying to say now.
Because he sort of that moment happened and then that was it. He stepped away.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been really great to see him, I don't know, giving it his all against Guzzlord or something like that just said he'd got the point and he was going to change his ways.
Mm-hmm. We know he was starting to reform, but we didn't get to see the payoff of that reformation that Ash helped him to come to realize. Yeah. But the fight itself was actually it contains one of the funniest moments in Pokemon history. And do you know what I'm talking about here?
No, you're gonna have to tell me.
Fire Blast oh, Glycopod uses emergency exit.
Oh yeah,
Scissor comes
yeah.
out, looks up, sees Fire Blast coming against him, and is just like KO, gone, finished.
That was hilarious.
It was so brilliant, and I love the fact that they kept Glycopod's ability, and that's how they sort of explain its cowardice. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
So I found that to be a pretty good fight. A bit less brutal compared to what Lana had to go through with her pre-marina, and Guzma
Yes.
using liquidation and poison jab and whatnot, and really taking Lana apart in that episode. So
Yeah, throat chop was a brutal move.
oh yeah, because you can't use she couldn't use what's the English name of it, Oceana something.
Sparkling Aria.
That's the one.
Sparkling Aria. No, Oceanic Operata is the
Z move,
Z
isn't
move,
it?
which actually Primarina did manage to pull off.
Yeah. But yeah, so that was the semi-final fight, and Guzma was a strong trainer, but he was not nearly as strong as his next opponent, who was
Gladion.
Yeah, Gladion. So, what do you think of this fight with Gladion? I thought it was
I thought the fight with Gladion was fitting of a final. I thought it was a really good fight.
Yeah.
I thought that it really tested Ash. I thought that it really tested Gladion. And I felt like the outcome was the right one. But I did feel like it was a really good and really sort of interesting battle. I thought the moment with Zoroark was really well done.
Yes. The reactions you get to seeing Zoroark for the first time, where Lusamine sees Zoroark and she's like, hang on a minute, that's my husband's, because we know that her husband's sort of missing. And Zoroark subsequently went missing as well, alongside Moan. So to see Zoroark still alive made her think, hang on a minute, there's a possibility here that my husband's alive. But what a cool moment.
To be honest, the bit that I really liked was that Ash went through the same confusion that I always go through when I fight Zoroark in a competitive mode, where I'm like, wait a second, like Conkeldurr can't use Dark Pulse. What's going on? And I have to do that moment where I'm like, oh, I understand what's going on now. So and the fact that Ash didn't know that Gladion had Zoroark made it all the more interesting. But it was just that moment where I'm like, Ash, I get it. Feel for you.
Feels bad, man.
Feels real bad.
But Gladion's a sort of contender you'd sort of see in another conference that you'd see in the top 16, the top 8. And so Ash does have a moment against a very strong trainer with strong Pokemon. Let's not forget, Lycanroc. You have absolutely got Silvally or Silvally or however you want to call it in English, Japanese. Yeah. And then you've also got Zoroark now added to the ranks, who we know is a very strong Pokemon in its own right. So
yeah, I feel like Gladion had a good team and it was a good battle.
You were quite confused by the ending of that battle, though, weren't you? Do you remember this?
I just couldn't get into my head. That he won. It just made no sense.
Yeah, because we saw that counter, and you forget that Ash also knows how to use counter with Lycanroc, and so it was just. I just didn't understand how Ash won. You were like, send out the next Pokemon now because this is not over, but no, it is very much over.
Yeah, I was like, surely this can't be it. Surely Ash can't win. Like, the whole point is that he just gets right up to the end and then he loses at the last second.
And you see it.
But no, he won.
Well, one of the cool moments before we talk about the ending of that fight was actually Z-Move versus Z-Move. You have him using Never Ending Nightmare Gladion against Pikachu, and Ash smiling and knowing that he's got an out here where he thinks ingeniously, hang on, run away from it, make it look like you're running away, turn around and use a Z-Move to destroy what do you call it?
Yeah, it was very cool.
What was it?
Never Ending Nightmare.
What was the Pokemon? It was shit.
It was Pikachu, wasn't it?
Pikachu versus Silvally, wasn't it?
Zoroark.
Was it Zoroark?
Zoroark.
Yeah, Zoroark. Sorry, that used Never Ending Nightmare, and so he has to one-shot it before the Z move reaches Pikachu, and it was just a brilliant moment and good thinking from Ash there, and that's the Ash we know, someone that thinks outside the box. So yeah, at the end of the battle, you see Ash on the ground, just looking up at the sky, and it's just like he's worn out, he's tired, and he's just like, even he can't believe he's done it. So what a sweet moment, honestly, what a sweet moment. But that wasn't the end of the Milano conference, because after you beat the finalist, you get to face the unbeatable Royal Mask, or Mask Royale, or whatever you want to call him. And this was the first fight in the series that was 6 versus 6. And it was quite a treat for us, I'd say.
I was going to say, if there was any battle in Ash's entire career that made me validate that he deserved to be champion. It was the battle with Kukui.
So I should probably talk about the Pokemon that Kukui have, and this is the kind of caliber, because Kukui, let's not forget it, he's a very experienced trainer. He's a Pokemon professor that specifically studies moves, so he knows his stuff. He does a side job in that he does the battle royale thing. I can't remember the city, but he does the battle royale thing, and he's undefeated in that. And this is the Pokemon team he led out with. He had Incineroar, he had Braviary, he had Venusaur, he had Empoleon, he had Lucario, and he had Tapu Koko. I mean, anyone that beats that lineup against such an experienced trainer deserves a championship. And like you said, him facing off against Kukui validated that whole entire sort of championship for me, to say Ash beat someone that was strong and therefore deserves a title for doing so.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that battle validated him as a champion.
And the battle itself, it was split into 4 parts, which I think might have been one of the longest arcs in the series itself. And it was a very nice treat to have 4 different parts to one battle, and arguably probably one of the best battles in the whole series. Not Sun and Moon only, but across the sort of generations. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there are some battles that definitely stand out for me in Ash's time as a trainer, and Kukui's one is absolutely one of them.
I think the other one for me recently was Ash vs Sawyer/Shota, if you remember that one, in XYZ in the semi-finals.
Yes.
That was
Sawyer and his Mega Sceptile.
Yeah, such a good battle. But yeah, so Ash does go on to beat Kukui, and so as we said, it validates the whole entire championship. But what should happen after he beats Kukui? Can he rest as champion?
Absolutely not.
No, what happens?
We get a sky full of Guzzlord.
I can't believe it. Just out of nowhere, you think Ash has finally won his last fight, he can rest now, we can go celebrate. Nope, an Ultra Beast comes out of the sky, and that's where they end the episode.
Yeah, it was a really good cliffhanger.
Yeah, and we've already discussed how they repelled the Guzzlords, how Ash already had the experience and let everybody know, look, this is the weaknesses, this is what you need to aim for. But on the whole, the Milano conference was very underwhelming, apart from the last 2 battles where, you had 2 very, very worthy rivals, I guess you can call them.
Yeah, and it was strange because the Milano conference had more battles actually on the show than any other tournament before.
Mm-hmm.
Because it showed all bits of every single battle from the knockout stages.
Yeah.
And it had obviously more trainers, 151 participants originally.
Sorry, you're absolutely right. Like in the older sort of conferences, we only see Ash's battles, usually only Ash's battles, but in this one we see every single top 16 round battle, top 8 round battle, top 4 round battle, so you can see each character's sort of progression in those fights and what makes them so special.
Exactly.
No, you're absolutely right. Have you got any more points in relation to the Milano conference, or?
No, I mean, like I said, I think it was, generally speaking, it was a bit of an underwhelming conference right up until the end, and then it really cranked up to top gear when we got to the finals, and especially the exhibition match.
I think we need to talk about Tapu Koko getting involved and facing off against Pikachu, and how epic that battle was, and how Pikachu actually overwhelms Tapu Koko for the first time and proves that it is the best electric Pokemon out there in the world. Yeah, Ash.
I mean, I still want to know. I still don't know to this day who Kukui's 6 Pokemon was going to be.
Yeah.
I'm curious, but I have to say that it was nice to see Pikachu finally get one over on Tapu Koko.
Yeah, and especially it being a legendary Pokemon, because before this, it did have a couple of battles with Tapu Koko. I think the first one he got absolutely destroyed. I think the second one is where it was a bit more evenly matched, and then Ash got teleported to that alternative universe. And then this third one, you see Pikachu actually wreck shop, and actually Ash do a Kamehameha with Pikachu to end the battle.
Yes.
Yeah, but it was really cool to see actually Kukui actually got the Z ring for the Tapu, the Tapiponium Z, and you see this massive giant Tapu who come out of nowhere. That was such a cool moment, honestly.
Yeah, I really wanted to see what that would look like, so I'm really glad that we got a chance to, because he's definitely the coolest C move.
I think the next segment we go into is the character development with Ash. Do you want to talk about Ash's character development?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we talked a bit at the beginning about, generally how the series began with Ash taking a big step backwards.
Mm-hmm.
just in terms of his maturity and development.
Mhm.
But obviously, as the series goes on, and he deals with some pretty hard-hitting issues, he does pick up, and obviously, at the end of the Nalo conference as champion, he does very much feel like a new, confident and I think very reflective Ash, which is really nice. He's obviously very thoughtful about his time in Alola and the Pokemon that he's been with, which is great. I mean, we'll come on to his Pokemon in a second, but for me, that was kind of the main part for me with Ash.
So yeah, Ash did take a step back at the beginning of this series, but I think we do still see in battles, that he still retains some of his ingenious uses of moves in battles. We see Electric Web, where he uses that to beat Mimikyu, for example. How he beats Hapu by spraying sort of water on Mudsdale and making it weak to Electric by making Mudsdale a water type essentially with Soak. And then obviously he uses Sludge Bomb versus Lucario's Kukui. Kukui's Lucario. Sorry, it's not the other way around. Yeah, as well. And, Kukui's thinking, why is this trainer doing this? And obviously Ash had the goal of blinding sort of Kukui and getting up the upper hand against him. And also against Misty as well, we see how Pikachu escapes from a vortex that Misty says herself, no one's ever been able to beat my Gyarados up until that point where Ash does it. So he still retains that sort of genius use of Pokemon moves, which was nice to see. And I think the development of him comes from the Ultra Task Force, which was a big thing in the series where you have this Ultra Task Force taking out all these Ultra Beasts left, right, and center. But I think when it comes to the Ultra Task Force, you get an Ash that's a bit more mature, that thinks a little bit more. He's not as impulsive as he is in the sort of day-to-day of the Sun and Moon series, which is quite the contrast to see. Because I think in the series we have a more hyperactive sort of impulsive Ash, but specifically for these episodes where he faces Ultra Beasts, he's a lot more methodical, a lot more smarter, which was quite a stark difference to what we saw throughout the series. That's all I've got to really say about Ash's character development.
No, that's a good point.
Thank you.
I think my favorite thing about his time with the Ultra Beasts is it gave Ash a chance to be much more thoughtful and considerate about other Pokemon and their well-being and how they live, and that was a nice side to see of Ash because it added the depth of maturity to it.
And let's talk about Pokemon, for example. So a bit of trivia for you. This series marked 3 notable firsts for his team, not counting temporary captures. So he caught his first genderless Pokemon, that being Poipole. He caught his first Steel type in Meltan, and also with Meltan, he caught his first mythical Pokemon. It's a little trivia for you.
There you go.
But in terms of his Pokemon, then we'll talk about his Pokemon. He had a Pikachu, he had a Rockruff that later evolved into Lycanroc, he had a Rowlet, he had Poipole, as we've already said, he had an Incineroar, and he had a Melmetal/Meltan. So where do you want to start, buddy?
Let's start with Rowlet. I mean, for me, probably my favorite of those was Rowlet.
Yes, absolutely.
Such a source of comedy in every episode that he was in. Really kind of well thought through character design. I liked that he found an Everstone. I liked that he held on to it. It was everything about him was funny. Everything about him was really sweet, and I really liked Rowlet. I thought he was a great addition to Ash's roster.
And let's just talk about his humble beginnings. It was born to a toucan amongst Pikipek as well. And it was always part of that nest, and it wasn't until Rowlet met Ash where Rowlet went back to the nest thinking, okay, this is things as usual, and he had Toucan telling Rowlet, no, you found somewhere you belong now, go ahead, leave the nest and go travel with Ash, which was really cool. In terms of his character, sorry,
I was going to say, he had a really nice backstory, and I liked actually with all of Ash's Pokemon that they had some backstory to them, and it wasn't
random captures.
Wild Pokemon and I caught it.
And I think he had some notable moments. I think one was against Olivia, where he uses Bloom Doom, and he managed to take out one of Olivia's Pokemon, which is really cool. The other one was he had an arc where he faced up against How's Dartrix. If you remember this, Rowlet wanted to learn Bullet Seed in order to counter Dartrix after losing to it, but then Rotom points out you can't lose Bullet Seed, but Rowlet was really stubborn about it, using all sorts of objects to try to learn Bullet Seed, and it unintentionally swallows an Everstone and learns Seed Bomb through it. So it was pretty cool. But now it means it can't ever evolve into a Dartrix or Decidueye. Now it's swallowed that Everstone. But that was pretty cool.
I still think it's perfect. I still think it's perfect for him.
Yeah, I like how he learned Seed Bomb through swallowing in Everstone by accident. Rowlet has got a good relationship with Meltan, which we'll talk about when we get into the Meltan territory. But another battle was against the Dragon-type gym, which was pretty cool. Rowlet again stealing the show against the Dragon-type gym.
Yep.
And it learned Brave Bird there, I believe.
I think it did, yeah.
And I think what was really cool is when Ash decided to use Rowlet against Hal, when he found out he was facing Hal. Rowlet flew into the sky, approached a wild Wingull, and asked it to bring its family to Malone Stadium to watch the match, which is so cool.
Yeah.
And like before the match, you had Toucannon and Trumbeak demonstrate to Rowlet how to use Feather Dance, which was really cool. And Rowlet was trying to learn how to use it, and he eventually learns how to use it during the fight, which really helps him beat Decidueye. But also his family gives him a cosplay of Decidueye as well, which is now canonly called Decidulet. So it was really cool.
Nice.
It was really cool.
It was
there was
very,
a
very
lot
cool
to love about Rowlet, really, and it was a powerful Pokemon for all intents and purposes, as we've seen it fight in all the battles that Ash was in and hold its own. So God bless Rowlet, I'd say, and it's my favorite grass type Pokemon now of all time. And I wish I could nap with a Rowlet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's my favorite grass type Pokemon of all time. So,
wow.
Yeah. We'll move on to Pikachu if you don't mind, because I think Pikachu deserves a big shout out here, because Pikachu, after having Electric Ball for such a long time, it learns Electric Web in a fight against Mimikyu. This is one of the trials he had to face before facing Nanu again. And it's he uses in so many versatile ways, as a springboard sometimes, to trap Pokemon sometimes. So shout out to Pikachu for learning a new move this generation, which I think is going to carry him well in future generations. He also uses...
Yeah, one of the nice things about Electro Web is it's a move that's not just offensive.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see Pikachu get a move that's going to add real versatility to the way Ash uses it.
And he uses it to trap Guzzlord in that alternative universe arc, to send Guzzlord back, so that was really cool. And I guess the other thing is Pikachunium Z, or Pikachunium Z, or however you want to sort of call it. He learns how
Pikachunium Z.
Yeah, he learns how to use 10 million Volt Thunderbolt, and he uses it a few times in the series. And that was a really cool move to learn, so yeah. Pikachu, powerful as ever, takes out a legendary Pokemon, beats Harlow's Hariyama in a Grand Trial, beats the Totem Gunchoos, holds its own against Tapu Koko, again like I said, beats Missy's Mega Gyarados, which no other trainers managed to beat, like she said, beat an Ultra Beast in the Heligo. I mean, what can you say about Pikachu? It just went from strength to strength in this series. Which is nice, it didn't get beaten by a Snivy or something stupid like that. But yeah, what do you want to talk about next?
Should we talk about Litten?
Okay, go for Litten. Tell me about Litten. What's so special about Litten here?
So I think Litten's backstory was really special, and he goes through several stages of grief in his time with Ash, where he's missing Stoutland, his old friend who passes away, and there's some really touching episodes for Litten that we talked about earlier, where he re-encounters Stoutland, and often for him that's the moments where he grows the most, is encountering Stoutland as a memory or a spirit or whatever it might be. So that was really really sweet.
And as a personality, Litten was always fiery, determined, and it was good to see it bond with Ash, finally join Ash's team, get over
and I thought it had a great rivalry with Kukui's Incineroar. That obviously spurred it on from fight to fight. That was really, really cool.
And for it to finally get its comeuppance against Incineroar by evolving into Incineroar itself and finally beating Incineroar was quite a sweet moment for Litten and its journey through Alola with Ash.
Absolutely.
I do want to get through a couple more very quickly, because I guess even though I did say this is a spoiler cast, time is off the table. I think people attention spans might drop off after this point. So I'll quickly give a shout out to Meltan. This is a mythical Pokemon that we still don't know what generation it's from, but accidentally joined Ash's team, and it was really cool to see within the tournament that thank you for the host, J Midforth. It's really cool to see during the tournament that it evolves into Melmetal by combining with other Melmetals, and it did put in a lot of work against Kukui and Gladion with double Iron Bash. So shout out to Meltan, and it had a relationship with Rowlet where they were both in Ash's bag sleeping, and when it became a Melmetal, Rowlet relocated to the middle of Melmetal's chest, which was pretty funny. But it was a really cool Pokemon to have in the series, and it was really nice to see Ash have a mythical Pokemon in his arsenal. And I guess we get Poipole as well, who joins Ash for a little while before moving into his own world. But Poipole joined Ash and was instrumental for the whole sort of Ultra Beast arc with Necrozma. And Poipole was very cheerful, a bit of a prankster, but it was a really sweet Pokemon, and I'm glad that it came back as a Naganadel to Ash in the final to help him win his first ever championship trophy. So what do you think of Ash's team? Pretty strong team as a whole. How does it compare?
It's strange. It's strange that when I think of Ash's standout, most powerful Pokemon, the ones that spring to mind, Charizard, Sceptile, Infernape are definitely the ones that really come to mind off the top of my head. Mm-hmm. And when I think about his team in Alola, certainly, obviously Incineroar I think is slightly to the side because it evolved so late in the story, mm-hmm. but I don't think of Rowlet and Lycanroc as being in that tier. And it's strange that Melmetal, Naganadel, and Incineroar all came about right at the end. Mm-hmm. And actually, Ash had more Pokemon evolve during the Monalo conference than he has in any other tournament ever. Mm-hmm. So I think, as we got right at the end of that battle with Kukui, did he have a very strong team? Absolutely. He had a mythical Pokemon and an Ultra Beast. That's something he's never had before. Mm-hmm. But if you take those two away for a second, his team, for me, doesn't stand out as his most powerful team of all time.
No, for sure. But I thought it was pretty strong until you made that point of they did join that all at the end. So, but I guess we're looking at it as a whole.
And if you actually subtract Melmetal and Naganadel, actually his other three Pokemon really don't stand out as all that powerful.
I forgot to mention Rockruff. I need to give a little shout out to Rockruff. Rockruff's arc as well was pretty touching. It was a playful Pokemon, but when meeting Lycanroc, it became determined to become a Lycanroc itself and wanted to fight, wanted to train, wanted to evolve, and it was quite aggressive throughout the series. It does eventually evolve into the Dusk form, which no one in Alola had seen for such a long time, through the help of the Tapus, who I think it was Tapu Fini or Lele? It was Lele, wasn't it? That helped it evolve into the Dusk form. But it had a nice little arc where, Nanu tested it, made it angry, and it sort of slowly learned how to deal with its anger about getting dirty, getting wet during a battle, and turned its weakness of going into a berserk mode into its own strength, a bit like a previous series, and the name is escaping me, Pokemon. Paul's old Pokemon. Monkey.
Persimmon? Who are you talking about?
Oh, shit.
I'm so confused.
Infernape, that's the one. Infernape, how it had anger issues. Yeah, it had anger. It couldn't control it. So, Lycanroc kind of has that same story arc as well, which is nice to see.
Yes, where he learns to control it.
Yeah, and it pays dividends because he controls it at just the right time in the final to win Ash the trophy. So I'd say it's a pretty strong team overall, maybe stronger than maybe some of his original teams early on, but certainly not as strong as the one in XYZ, that's for sure. That is for sure.
No.
Characters, we see so many characters in the series, but I think I'm going to touch on, we've talked about Lana, we've talked about Mallow, we've talked about Sophocles, but Lily, I think we need to give a shout out to.
Sophocles.
He's got Mama name Mama name in the Japanese, which is basically it is what it is basically translated. So it's a weird name. But Lily, she has this arc where she finally is able to touch Pokemon again, but it's revealed as a kid she got attacked by an Ultra Beast, and a type Null helps her against Ultra Beast, but she doesn't see it that way, and so she's got a fear of Pokemon that she has to live with. And slowly in the anime, she gets this egg with Vulpix and slowly learns how to interact with Pokemon, and it's quite sweet. By the end of it, she's got a Magearna, and she finds out her dad's still alive, and she goes on her own journey to go find out where her dad is. But it's nice to see that she didn't have confidence in the beginning. She couldn't interact with Pokemon, and now she's setting out on her own journey in the series to go find out where her father is, which is pretty cool. Do you want to say anything about Lily?
I think she has some really nice character development. Of all of the side characters, she obviously was the one that changed the most over time, getting over PTSD and all that. I think it was handled really delicately, and I was really impressed with her as a character.
Gladion we see in and out through the series. There's not much to talk about him other than that we know he's a very strong trainer, and he's got a legendary Pokemon as his partner, so pretty cool for him. Kukui is the one I want to talk about, where Kukui for me is one of the best Pokemon professors we've had in such a long time. He's a strong trainer as well, and I think for me, he's the sort of father figure that Ash really needed and never had. So I want to give a big shout out to Kukui.
And you really see that at the end of in the final moments of the series, where Kukui and Burnett are giving Ash a hug, and you really do get a sense of this is his Alolan family. This is his dad and his mum in Alola, and you really get a sense of that. The other thing for Kukui is, no Pokemon professor has ever been this involved in a series before. Kukui is in, not every episode, but the vast majority of them.
Sure.
And obviously the others, Professor Oak, Rowan, etc., just aren't in the episodes. And it's really nice to see Kukui in, so many episodes, because I think he's a great character and he adds a lot to the series.
The only thing to say is that at the end as well, he says to Ash, look, wherever you go, wherever you are, if you ever need anything, we'll be always, he says we, as in with Burnett, he will always be here for you, so don't forget that. And I did tear up at that moment, because that was such a nice moment. Kiawe, he's got a farm, he wants to be a strong trailer, and he wants to be the island sort of representative. Forgot what the name of it is called. Kahuna, he wants to be a Kahuna in his own island, so that's pretty cool. Lana, she's a very playful person. She goes off on her own adventure to go find Manaphy, so that's really cool. Mallow, obviously we talked about how she deals with death in the series, and she wants to run a cafeteria, so good luck to her on that. Softcool deals also with sort of death, in the sense that we have that one episode with the star Pokemon, a Minior, for example, a star Pokemon, where he forgets about Minior, and he realizes his wife forgot about Minior because of the horrific reveal that Minior that come down from the skies die within about 24 hours of them coming down. So he had to sort of learn about that and get over that. So he has his own little arc, and now he's no longer afraid of the dark, so good for him. And he does have a few episodes where his Charger Bug does a few races here and there, which is quite funny.
Yes.
So yeah, that's all I've got to say about Softcalls, really. How is portrayed differently in the anime compared to the games, where how in the anime is a lot more energetic, he's quite confident, but just inexperienced, and so I guess his fight against Ash is going to really spur him on to train more, get more experience, and come back to the Milano conference to become a champion himself. So best of luck to him.
Yeah, and I hope he makes it all the way to be a Kahuna.
We talked about Burnett briefly. Where do we know Burnett from before the Sun and Moon anime?
I don't know.
We knew her from the Pokemon Dream World. She was the professor introduced there, would you believe?
What? So she was one of Professor Fennel's assistants?
So she had a relationship with one of the professors. I think I've got the Japanese name. Yeah, Fennel. She's friends with Professor Fennel. But if you go to Pokemon Dream World, you actually see Burnett there as well as a character. So
how interesting.
Yeah, so it was cool that this is her first debut in the core series. But she is a professor that did sort of dream studies as well as
very nice
as Fennel. But she also in this series she does research about the Ultra Hulls, and she's instrumental during the UB arc, helping everyone get inside the wormhole, which sounds wrong, but that aside, she's such a sweet character, and I'm really glad that she hooked up with Kukui. So yeah, that's all I've got to say with Burnett. Samson Oak, who's a cousin of Professor Oak, he loves puns, and I absolutely loved his puns, but I just wanted to say something about him. His Japanese voice actor died, It was the same voice actor as Professor Oak as well, who had been since the very beginning of the series till now, so over 1,000 episodes with him. And I just want to pay tribute to Unsho Ishizuka, who was the voice actor for both Professor Oak and Samson Oak, and may he rest in peace. He did a stellar job.
No, he really did. A very, very recognizable voice in the series.
Absolutely, and I want to shout out Team Rocket in the series, who continue to be entertaining, provided a lot of comedy relief. It was heartbreaking to see them having to leave Hidoide, which is Toxapex, or Marini, I guess, and also have to leave Mimikyu behind. But they had a relationship with Beware, which we should mention. Like, instead of blasting off again, Beware would appear out of nowhere and collect them before they blast off again. And there was only like 2 or 3 episodes
did you prefer that?
I liked it for the context of the series. And there were 2 or 3 episodes where they do get to blast off again, and Team Rocket were quite happy that they got to blast off again. But I kind of like Beware appearing out of nowhere. It just added comedy relief, and that's sort of what Sun and Moon does right. It adds a lot of comedy, and there's always a funny moment in it. So I thought it was funny. Did you think it was funny? Or did you like it? Sorry.
I definitely thought it was funny the first few times. I wish that it hadn't lasted as long as it did, because sometimes I felt like I was being deprived of like what I really wanted, which was to hear we're blasting off again. It felt like we were always being teased, and then we just got it taken away from us at the last second. Mm-hmm. But no, I really like Beware generally.
So they had a rivalry with Motori, which we spoke about earlier, where Motori had a Alolan Meowth that tricked Team Rocket to get to the top, basically, of the Rocket organization. So they had that rivalry, and they do get in the way of Team Rocket, especially Motori, when Team Rocket are trying to get through the wormhole. So that was pretty cool. We found out that Nanu's an acquaintance of Giovanni, and Giovanni speaks to Nanu, and he tells Team Rocket to go visit Nanu to go get themselves a Z-Ring. So that was pretty cool. Very cool reveal there.
Yeah, I mean, very interesting. I mean, it fits Nanu's personality and character very well.
In this series, we have Team Skull, and I guess in this series, Team Skull don't play a huge part in it. Guzma plays the biggest part of Team Skull, but Team Skull are just a funny gang, and they're there again for comedy relief. There's not much they actually contribute to in the overall story of the anime, so that's just a little aside about Guzma. But who's your favorite character out of the lot?
I think it probably is Kukui. I really liked him as a father figure to Ash. I thought he was a funny character in the right ways. I thought his relationship with Burnett was really sweet. But it's just nice to see Ash have a sort of mentor figure that I don't think he's had in quite the same way from Brock or Cylon or anyone else that he's traveled with. I think Kukui just gives this element of maturity that is really nice for Ash. So for me, he's probably my highlight. How about you?
Yeah, Kukui for sure. Absolutely for sure. I did like Lucamine's arc where she doesn't realize how much she's contributing to the destruction of her own family. And it's only until after the arc where she finally gets kidnapped by the Elder Beast and she gets saved, where she starts to realize things and starts to understand that her family is precious and she needs to take more time to look after her family. And not accused of Lily of being a child. So, that was a good character arc. But Kukui for sure, and especially because of the end and how he ended with Kukui and Ash, he's always going to have a special place in my heart, honestly. And I do hope with Pokemon Journeys we see him again at some point. And just before I come into the music of the series, there was a band episode, and I don't know if you're even aware of this, but I
was aware of it. Yeah,
I didn't even realize this was a band episode until I was getting together a SpoilerCast, because I watched it and I just assumed, and I didn't think there was anything wrong, but it was essentially an episode where Ash meets a Persimmon who's getting bullied, and he essentially helps the Persimmon take out this other group of Persimmon, or makes the other group of Persimmon realize that they shouldn't be so aggressive with this Persimmon. But in order to become a Persimmon, Ash sort of gets in cosplay, but some people interpret it as Ash going into blackface, and therefore the West did not decide to use that episode. So I'm not going to say it's right, I'm not going to say it's wrong, but I think the fact that I didn't even realize there was anything wrong with it speaks to maybe an overreaction in the West, but that's down to everyone's
I think
opinion.
With everything, I mean, certainly there's no insinuation in the episode that
he's doing it to mock or be racially insensitive.
It's anything malicious, but I can certainly understand.
Oh yeah, sure.
The sensitivity and I think do I feel one way or the other about whether it was right or wrong? Probably I'd rather err on the side of sensitivity that says, don't show it. But I think it's just one of those tricky situations where, that there are probably less sensitivities in the Japanese audience than there are globally.
Dude. I mean,
Go ahead.
know what, you're right. You're right. The culture's a bit different, but I just think he was dressing up as a Pokemon, and that's how I looked at it personally. And I just thought, I couldn't see it being a problem. And then, like you said,
Oh no,
yeah,
and so like I think in isolation I would totally agree with
yeah,
you. And like I don't want to get into this debate on the podcast
yeah,
because it's a Pokemon
yeah.
podcast. But I do certainly understand and sympathise with people who may actually disagree with it. I do understand the
Do I
point.
think anyone lost anything by not watching it? No, not really. And I guess
No,
Pokemon Company made the decision, and it's not one that's really going to affect the grand scheme of things. So fair play to them.
no, not at all.
So yeah, that was a cool little trivia. There was a banned episode which I was quite shocked about, but hey, there we are. And yeah, let's talk about the music, the intros. I didn't like the English intro. I like the Japanese intros. I'm not even going to bore people with that. They can go watch it if they want to listen to it. But I did like
I actually really liked the first English intro.
it.
I might be in the minority,
It
but
suited
I
it.
actually really thought
It
it fit with
suited
the
it.
Alola
It
theme.
fitted it. It fitted
Yeah,
it because of the music. But was it good?
yeah,
We're gonna have to do an English top tier, like English openings list. It's a far cry to what we used to get back in the day with Pokemon, and what we're
absolutely.
actually getting
Yeah.
with Journeys now, which was actually surprising to me. So, shout out to the
Mm.
intros. But I didn't like the intros too much, especially the Ultra Adventures intro or whatever. Have you listened to the Ultra Adventures intro?
Yes, no, I
It's
have.
really weird. Really weird.
It is. They're all really
The
weird.
background music, so the Pokemon Sun and Moon anime, what they did really smartly is they incorporated previous series' music into this series, and so they're drawing from all sorts of different eras of Pokemon and bringing in the music here, and I really like that. But you wanted to talk about the dub and using the X and Y battle music for the fight against Gladion, didn't you?
So it didn't occur to me until I watched an episode of the dub that the background music is different in some instances in the dub versus the Japanese
Yeah.
original, the sub. And it actually bothered me a bit that the music for the Monalo conference was all the XY battle music and not the Sun Moon battle music.
And even
And then when I compared it to the
sorry, keep going.
no, go ahead.
No, go.
I was going to say when I compared it to the sub, the Japanese original, like the atmosphere and the tense atmosphere that the original music creates is so much better than perhaps I think I personally think what the sub creates. Sorry, no, than what the dub creates. Because I do think that the XY battle music felt a little bit out of place. Because I do think that the general overtunes from the Sun and Moon series were really nice, and they obviously had lots of different audio from the Sun and Moon series that they featured.
Mhm.
It was just strange to then at the end switch back to X and Y for the championship match
And not only just
or matches.
X and Y, but I watched the entirety of the Ash versus Gladion match, and they use a lot of original music that I don't recognize from anybody anywhere else in the Pokemon franchise. So they use the X and Y music, which did happen in the Japan release, but that was only one part of the fight they used the X and Y battle for. The second part of the fight, they actually did use Gladion's theme, which is completely missing from the English audio, which I thought was really strange. Look, and remind me to send you the videos after the podcast. But they do use Gladion's theme in the sub, which they completely miss out from the English bit. And I guess other examples of where the sub and the dub differ is like one, for example, when Zero Aura appears for the first time, you've got this really weird music happening in the English sort of dub, but in the Japanese dub, you hear the Pokemon series theme tune, that makes things so much more epic. Melmetal,
Yeah, I agree with you.
Melmetal when it's evolving. You have the Kanto gym entrance theme,
Yep.
but they use a heavy metal variant of it as well to make it feel more epic. And so it's just really weird how the English sort of anime don't sort of pull from the archives of what we have for the series, and I hope that's something that will change with the Journeys anime. Just talking on the Journeys anime, they've actually brought in a guy called Yuki Hayashi, and most people know him from shows like Haikyuu and My Hero Academia. He does a lot of movies, anime movies, or like television series as well. But so far in the Journeys anime for sub, and I'm going to watch the dub as well with you when we do our review series for each episode. But the kind of new sort of original music he makes for the series is so good, and I just hope that dub doesn't neglect using that, because it's just
it's strange because it's one of those things that
it loses tension in some of the
it's
scenes.
strange because it's one of those things I don't think you need to change. I think it's language agnostic, so it is strange that it didn't even occur to me that it would be different between the two.
Yeah, it's weird. They've been doing it for quite a while now, especially in XYZ when Serena has her sort of final championship battle. Was it performance? A final performance. Her build-up is like the legendary theme, and then for the English one, it's just some generic background music, which is weird. But that aside, I'm just disappointed at one thing, and there's no orchestral CD that's been released for the Sun and Moon anime, so that's really disappointed me. But yeah, is there anything you want to talk about the music in the series in general?
No, I mean, I thought that the Sun and Moon music was really good. It was just, I think it was just to make the point that about the difference between the difference between the dub and the sub.
Yeah.
It was really surprising.
Yeah, I did take an effort to clip out some stuff that I'll send you afterwards, but yeah, I don't know. I just hope it changes in Journeys, because I think people deserve a little bit more better when it comes to some of those scenes, because you're not getting like 100% of what that scene is. You're only getting about 90% of it. But yeah, I mean, that's really it from me. I mean, the only sort of trivia is, like you said, Ash doesn't challenge for gym battles. Doesn't challenge gyms for badges. He doesn't have a hoodie or a jacket. He doesn't catch a regional bird. You know, there's quite a lot of trivia. None of the movies during the Sun and Moon anime are connected to Sun and Moon in any sort of way. We've had the most human protagonists in this series, and yeah, no, that's it really from me. If you've got any other business.
No, I mean we've exhausted ourselves on the Sun and Moon anime.
Yeah. Have you been taking timestamps, by the way?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, this podcast is going to be up on Monday or Tuesday, guys. I do have to edit one bit.
Yeah, it's been
for the most part,
it's been a bit of a marathon, this one.
Yeah.
Normal service resume next week.
Yeah, but we will do some sort of spoiler cast for each episode of the Pokemon Journeys anime. We'll just have to figure that out, and it might take a month or so, but we'll get there and we'll catch up. So be patient with us, but till then, thank you so much for listening, and look, we'll be back on Sunday for a brief episode, if anything. So we'll see you then. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Oh, twitch.tv/KamelH on Sunday 7:30 p.m. GMT. You can find us on Spotify as well, and YouTube as well. Just search the PokeRamble podcast. All right, bye.